Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of I'll Call You Right Back podcast with me, your host. My name is Chad Medved. This is my show. Last one of the year, everyone. It's a big one. I just wanted to take some time and just say I really appreciate everyone who has taken the time to listen to any of the episodes that I put out this year. Big year for me. I had the 200 episode party, talked to people like Sally Wiggin, Josh Getzoff from the Penguins, Rick Seaback, and then I became friends with a man named John Shalkowski. If you do not know who John Shalkowski is, crawl out from under a rock. If you're from Pittsburgh and you do not know who this is, you need to figure it out. His name on social media is Odd Pittsburgh, and what he does is specializes in the odd and mysterious and unusual facts about the city of Pittsburgh. Things that people have no idea about. People that historians probably don't even know. This guy, John, is kind of crazy, kind of obsessive. Actually, he's not he is obsessive. He becomes obsessed with things and he dives into them and knows them inside and out. Me and him talked back, I believe it was episode 210, 220. I don't know. It was back in July, I think, but that was the first time him and I sat down for a two-part episode. It was absolutely insane. The feedback was off the chain, so I obviously had to bring him back for a Halloween episode. We did another two-parter about all kinds of creepy shit in the city, and what I had to do for everyone as a nice Christmas gift is bring John back for the absolute perfect Christmas special. You heard it right. The Odd Pittsburgh Christmas special is out right now. You're listening to it, and this is my gift from me to you. Well, actually from me and John to you, but I'm just pumped about it. I'm really pumped to be able to sit down with him again and just learn a little bit more about our city, because the things that John brings up, it's not just your cookie cutter facts about Pittsburgh. These are things that nobody knows about. We talk about everything from the Christmas spirit. We talk about everything about what Christmas means to us. We talk about, what it was like when we were growing up. And then we start getting into all kinds of wild stuff. As usual, if you've listened to any of the previous episodes, this is a tangential journey of informative pieces. John reads some articles, he reads some stories, he tells us all about these incredible people throughout the city. Like I said, we're talking about Santa. We're talking about the real life Santa. The story that John finishes this podcast with is probably the craziest Christmas story of all time. And that's not even embellishing. It's probably the craziest Christmas story you will ever hear in your entire life. And it's all true. I'm looking at the articles right now as I'm doing this intro with you. If you could hear, that's all the paper shuffling. These are all the articles that John brought with him to talk to me. We're talking about Judge Michael Masmano, who was around from 1897 to 1968. That guy has an insane history. We're talking about Pittsburgh department stores back in the day. We're talking about light up night history. We're talking about the history of Santa Claus in general. And then we get to the most important person, arguably maybe in Pittsburgh history. He could be argued as one, Jacob Gusky. I'm not even going to elaborate on what this guy does besides for saying that this was the real life Santa Claus right in Pittsburgh. But I will quit talking your ears off. I do want to say this will be the last episode of the year. I'm going to take the last, week or two of the year to just have some time for myself. I appreciate it. Worked hard this year. It was a big year for me. I'm very excited about 2023. We got some big moves coming up with that. A couple more live shows. Oh yeah, live shows. Just had my live event down at the Parkway Theater in McKees Rocks. That was this past Sunday. I have to say, everyone who came, it was a banger. Had a wonderful time. It was great to see everyone. We watched Home Alone. We had some trivia. We ate some good food from Streets on Carson. And then we hopped back in the theater and we watched Gremlins. And we watched these on the big screen, and it was second to none. You can't beat Gremlins and Home Alone in a movie theater with a group of good people around you. And I just wanted to say thank you very much to everyone who participated in that. And thank you for everyone who supports the podcast. If you're listening right now and you have not, please remember subscribe to Odd Pittsburgh, subscribe to me at I'll Call You Right Back. Leave any reviews you are able to do. If you're listening on Spotify, throw me a 5-star. If you're listening to Apple Podcasts, throw me a 5-star review. That's huge for me, and it's free for you. But to keep this train chugging along, feed into a little bit of a review. That's all it is. That's all I'm asking for you. Merry Christmas to you all. I appreciate it. Once again, without further ado, episode 227 of I'll Call You Right Back podcast, the Odd Pittsburgh Christmas Special.
I gotta use the telephone.
Hello?
Telephone.
I'll call you right back. Call you right back.
Telephone.
I'll Call You Right Back podcast. I'm happy we were able to make this happen. I wanted to open this up by asking you, what does Christmas mean to you?
Oh, well, this is a good, important question, and it deserves a good answer. And I'm going to tell you, wholeheartedly, the first time I knew the true meaning of Christmas, and it didn't happen to me until I was 19 years old.
19.
Now, we all know that, like, waking up on Christmas morning, you think that's what Christmas is all about. You wake up, you go run downstairs or whatever, or you run to the Christmas tree. It's all about cousins and the food. And
You had a standard Christmas morning?
Standard, yeah, okay. Traditional Christmas. I'm an only child, so it was even better. I had I got all the gifts, I have to share with nobody. So, Christmas meant a lot, in that aspect to me growing up. And same with, the decorations and just going to the mall and, all that type of stuff. But I always knew that Christmas meant more than just getting cool gifts.
Yeah.
And it takes age, really, to understand
100%.
that. I teach my kids the lessons that I've learned, even though they're young now. But I tell them these lessons so maybe they can learn at an earlier age.
Yeah. What age are they?
My youngest is 5.
5?
And then 12 and 13.
Okay, 12 and 13. Do the 12 and 13-year-olds, do they still believe in Santa?
Well, yeah. I still believe in Santa.
Yeah, but, do they have any sort of... The reason I even ask that is because as a young kid, I feel like growing up in social media, it's dangerous. You could just it kind of takes away the allure of it.
Just like all good dads and people, we know Santas, and I know a guy, just like a guy.
Yeah.
Who's a Santa. And just like your guy and just like my guy, the epitome of Santa Claus. This guy I know, like his house is decorated for Christmas in June, all of 24, 365. I went over his house once in October because we were talking about some event. We were going to try to combine, do things and stuff. He's the official Santa Claus of Pittsburgh.
I saw
that guy who pulls the lever downtown to turn on the tree.
Yeah.
And he's the guy at the History Center and the guy at the Market Square and all that type of stuff. So he, and I'm not going to get into this, maybe I will, but he truly is, even his past. I looked into his past history, which he doesn't know I did. And I found things from the 1980s and stuff and 90s and things that he was doing without anyone really kind of knowing that he was doing them, making him a real life Santa Claus. But regardless of what he would later go on to do as an older man.
Yeah.
I'm getting off track. I'm going to go back.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Well, yeah. So I know this guy, he is Santa Claus. I'm over his house in October. Okay. And, we're just talking about, just anything or whatever. He was trying to write maybe a book on the history of Pittsburgh Christmas and publish it through the History Center and that type of stuff. Anyways, October, it's, 3:00 in the afternoon is, the alarm clock goes off at his house. I'm not kidding you. In every room of his house, cuckoo clocks of Christmas sorts and things of all sorts of holiday things to start going off in his house, in every room of his house, and legitimate Christmas cuckoo clocks. He's got paintings on his wall that were done by that Linda Betancourt, or very famous Pittsburgh artist, where he's the inspiration behind her Santa Claus and stuff.
Wow!
And so she has all these artwork of him, but it's like in a mystical world, like legitimately as Santa.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane. This level of Santa Claus that this guy goes to.
Yeah.
So I know him, and he's and he remembers the kids, and I mean, he legitimately, if you write him a letter, he puts it on his actual like fridge at his house. Like when I went over there, he had letters from kids on his fridge still, like completely covered his fridge.
Wow.
And he was leaving them up there for like forever, you know?
Yeah.
And it wasn't, I've never seen anything like it. But anyways, back to the point of where I first heard, or where the meaning of Christmas first got to me.
Yeah.
I move away from Pittsburgh. I move to Hollywood when I was 18 and a half. And I lived there for a few years by myself, going to film school. I didn't have a car. And I was completely supported by my parents. Everything, like they would send me money every month or whatever, every week.
Yeah.
They paid for everything. I was actively going to school. I was only 19. And I knew that I was, so it was that first year I was out there, and I used to wander up and down Hollywood Boulevard all the time, just because I lived there, right off of Hollywood Boulevard. So I would, it was like I had to walk up and down all the time, and I would get to know certain homeless people that would just be on the street. You'd see the same people every day, when you live there. And eventually, they're not going to ask you for money anymore because like they know who you are.
Yeah.
And it was, didn't really think twice about it. I mean, I felt bad about it, but I didn't really think twice about it. And until it was the week that I was going to come back to Pittsburgh for the first time to visit for my family during Christmas. And my dad couldn't send any extra money. I mean, I had a plane ticket and that was it, And I had, I'm not joking, $20 in my wallet, and I had a $2 bill, I think, somewhere in there. So I wasn't completely broke. But I had, that's all the money I had to my name. I knew that I had some, mac and cheese at home, some ramen noodles, some, ravioli to keep me going, so I wasn't worried about food. But, I mean, you need, nobody wants to have an empty wallet, especially when you're in a country, completely across the country from anybody
Yeah.
So anyways, I'm walking home one day, and this is like just a couple days before I was going to leave, and this guy stops me on the street, a homeless guy, and he's like, please, do you have anything, any money at all? I could use anything you got. And I thought, I was like, look, man, he's like, here. I gave him my, last $20. I was like, take it, get whatever, you want with it. And he was like, oh my, God. He's like, this is, he literally thought it was a Christmas miracle. He thought it was a guardian angel. He started breaking down, like bursting into tears and hugging me and stuff like this. Like it meant so much to him. Like he thought it was his last resort was to ask somebody randomly on the street. And then I were to give him like all the money I had in my pocket, where we literally changed places for a brief moment in time where he had more money than I had.
Yeah.
And then we went out, I went on my merry way, but then what I realized, in that moment of giving, just out of the sake of giving and not expecting anything in return, was the true meaning of Christmas.
Yeah.
So I learned a couple other things while I was out in LA that attributed to my kind of love of Christmas, or what Christmas really meant. And what is a gift? Of course, there's monetary gifts, money, Legos, video games, things you could buy somebody, right? But, Christmas is way beyond that.
Yeah.
The spirit of Christmas. And I met a man when I was in Los Angeles. I was filming a thesis film when I was going to film school, and I wanted to do a documentary series about interviewing different groups of people and asking them questions that nobody asked, like going to, I chose like the homeless population of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask them, how did you become homeless? Do you believe in God? Do you, what about love? Like, does your family know you're homeless? Like all these different things, questions that you wouldn't just randomly ask somebody on the side of the street. I figured I would just do this. Like I had no other reason. Like I was just curious myself, just wanted to explore, and I knew at that time period too, like I was just one step away. If something happened to my parents or something, I would be there, So I kind of could relate a little bit to their situation, I guess. So I started interviewing all types of people. I mean, I went down to Union Station, like the middle of downtown LA, next to the old part of LA. And there was like a homeless village in the woods that existed there, and people just everywhere. And everywhere you looked, there was just so many homeless people. And some random guy named Country was his name, because he wore a cowboy hat, and everyone called him Country.
Yeah.
He was kind of was nice enough to kind of show us around, show us the ropes of like what it is to be homeless in LA, and then introduce us to other people and get us all these interviews. And we interviewed so many different people. I mean, they had so many different experiences. Some of them were, you know, drug related. Some people didn't know, their families didn't even know they were homeless. Other people were just embarrassed to tell that they became homeless.
Yeah.
So many different situations. I found one couple that were like completely madly in love with each other. Like a girl and a guy, both homeless, who found each other and like legitimately fell in love on the streets.
Wow.
True love. Most people, 9 out of 10, were like very religious, which I was very surprised.
Really?
In fact, they were more religious than others groups of people that I would meet.
Wow.
Which I thought, would be the opposite.
That's interesting to hear.
Yeah. A lot of people considered the, the helping of people, to be a religious, in religious nature.
Yeah, God will provide.
Right. So you have this kind of like ideas, but you could tell there's like a warped mentality, otherwise they wouldn't be sitting there on the street. And I did ask, like, what would it take to get you not on the street? And it's such a complex answer. A lot of it has to do with just simply not having a mailing address to receive a check.
Yeah.
So there's lots of basic needs beyond that. But I met a man, and I met a lot of people there who were all impactful, but one guy much more than anybody else. And I think about him at Christmas time as a way of giving gifts. So this man, while maybe mentally unstable a bit, sat at the corner at Union Station in LA. That's where his like spot was, because you had to claim your spot,
Yeah.
And he had this sign, and it just said "Smile," and people called him Smiley. It was his name, And I talked to him, and I wish I could find the interview because I do have it somewhere. But he gave this interview, and he talked about that, like, he knows where he stands in life now as an older man, homeless man for the last 20 years. He's become acquainted with it and realizes that he might die on the street.
Yeah.
And he's been given so much, he said to me. Okay. In terms of, people being, legitimately giving him things or giving him money or whatever. A lot of people don't want to touch people, in LA. You don't want to like hand someone money.
Yeah.
Even that becomes an issue. Some guy even explained how he uses a palm leaf to extend out to a car so someone can just like shoot it down the chute.
Wow.
And this guy made more money than I did, at the time. So anyways, Smiley was a whole nother level of person.
And you're 19 at this time.
I'm 19. Yeah.
And this guy's how old?
Who knows? This guy, in his late 50s.
Okay, so he was an older guy.
Really down on his luck. But he told me this story about like how he's been given all these gifts, throughout his life, and that he feels that his mission in life now, knowing that he doesn't have anything, is to give away everything he possibly can. And since he doesn't have any kind of money or toys that he could give you, the least thing he could give you is a smile.
Wow.
Yeah. And he'll be like, he would pull up. He wouldn't ask for money. He'd be like, he'd hold a sign up and be like, smile, smile. And then they get somebody would smile.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, thank you.
Wow.
This was what made this man happy. This man figured it all out. This guy figured out the meaning of life. I knew it right then and there. I was like, while he might be a little crazy because of his situation, this man has figured out like what it is, the gift of giving, whether, it could be anything, even a smile.
Yeah. Something as simple as a smile.
Right. And that is what I bring to my belief in how Christmas should operate.
Yeah.
And how I, kind of my general, feeling on Christmas now. It was different when I was young, prior to being 18 years old, completely different. It was just like anybody else's, thinking Santa Claus is going to bring me all the gifts I want.
Yeah.
Not realizing, what it really means. And we'll talk, there's going to be a story that I'm going to end with, which is about a man who is a Santa Claus, which will blow your mind. So now you tell me,
So Christmas, what does Christmas mean to me?
Yes.
Christmas was, I mean, I would call Halloween my favorite holiday now, but up until I was probably like 16, 15, 14, around there, Christmas meant everything in the world to me. Everything from decorating with my dad, putting lights up outside, to putting the tree up, to putting all that, to the feeling of, see, it was different for me because my house, we have a big family. My house was, the meeting place on Christmas Eve, 35 people. I had a slew of cousins that were all relatively the same age. It was just such a magical time. Everyone would meet on Christmas Eve. All the young kids are playing around, and then we would berate the parents. When could we open gifts? When could we open gifts? Then everyone would open their gifts, and we'd all play together. And it was just such like a, whenever I was younger, I always like wanted to sleep over my cousins' houses. I always wanted to be around them. So that was like the main time where everyone was going to be at our house for 12 hours and it was just going to be a fun ass day. And then I'm going to go to sleep and I'm going to wake up and there's going to be even more presents there. The typical young thing, is Santa going to eat the cookies or the carrots going to get eaten by the reindeer? That whole thing. And then, I interviewed a Santa a couple weeks ago. I asked him and I was like, when did you start, or when did the idea of Santa Claus kind of not dissolve of what it really is, but when did you realize that that's a regular guy in that suit? And I was trying to think to myself when that happened for me, and I have no idea. I literally have no idea when that allure of a guy bringing toys to the whole entire world kind of dissolved a little bit into knowing that it was my parents.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I was like really trying to like hone in on when that was. But other than that, it's like I feel like all the things that surrounded me around these times is what really like cultivated my love for it. Like I was in Boy Scouts, so in McKeesport they have this thing called the Festival of Trees that was a long running thing where all these different organizations, firefighters, schools, everything. It was just a main pavilion in McKeesport, and there was all these trees, and we would volunteer there every year. We would have to go light the luminaria down like through the park, and everything about it just seemed like it just filled my heart with like joy.
Oh yeah.
That's like the only way I can describe it. It's like I love cold weather. I love seeing all the lights. Me and my wife still just drive around and look at lights, and it was everything I ever wanted. But as you said, as a young kid, it's like I'm gonna get these toys. Like we're gonna get dope toys, and I was very fortunate. My parents always laced it out for me and my brother. You would walk out and you would just see these big things, but it started to graduate as I became older to me wanting to give people good gifts. And I always, I don't know where it came from, but I love the idea of paying attention to what people like and trying to blow them away with what I gave them.
Right.
And that's kind of like where it like all came from. And now being an adult, I have no kids. You pulled up and I was wearing a Santa outfit. Like it was everything I wanted in my life, is to be the guy that could just give these little kids gifts, make them happy, give them joy. Because I remember how much it meant to me as a young kid.
Right.
And if I had someone do that for me as a young kid, I knew how much that would mean for me. And now my brother has children, like 2 and like about to be 1. So it's like, I get to be that fun uncle because I don't have kids and I don't plan on have kids. So it's like, that's kind of where my mind is at now. It's like, I put my Christmas tree up right after Thanksgiving. I'm all for it. My wife is not like she's not like dead into Christmas. She don't absolutely love it. She just told me, she was like, for someone who doesn't really love Christmas as much, it surprises me that I married a man that walks around in a Santa outfit. And like that's really like what it meant to me growing up. It's like family being around and all of that together. Just that unity is one. But I mean, it's different as an adult now. It's like, that's why I asked you about your kids, like about, what it is. Like, I can't imagine growing up now, or growing up now as a young kid having like a phone, seeing all these things. I remember like getting a magazine, the Toys R Us magazine, looking through that. And then as I go through and like research all the stuff that I was researching, you know, it talked about like all the window displays, that being like, you know, how everything was like kind of rolled out, how kids found out about that stuff. And it was just such a different time.
Oh yeah.
And
well, I mean, I have a Target came out with a catalog this year, and I made all my kids go around, circle all the items they have. And you could even scan it with a QR code, like the page that they like stuff on, and there it is. You know,
wow.
And you can buy off the page. So that's what I had them do instead of going online or then I took them to Macy's. They made the third floor a Toys R Us at Ross Park Mall now.
Really?
Yeah. So it's back. You know, Jeffrey's back.
Wow.
So anyways, I took them there and, you know, did the
that's open
same
now?
type of thing. Yeah.
Oh damn! I didn't know that.
Yeah, you should go. Yeah, it's, you know, for a kid could be a kid.
Yeah,
yeah. So, anyways, so that type of stuff does still exist. You know, you still got to make it magical. You know, and it is. I mean, like, regardless of any kind of truths, you know, that might exist, underlying truths of Santa Claus spirit.
Yeah.
You know, when I talk about like how I believe in Santa Claus now. It's because that's like I believe in Santa Claus spirit. I've met what the closest thing I could say is Santa Claus. It doesn't take a big red suit to be Santa Claus. You know that.
Yeah.
You know, anybody, you, me, we can all be Santa Claus. And we'll talk about that for my last story, which based upon what you were just talking about will blow your mind.
I honestly can't wait.
Yeah, can't wait to tell you.
Let me ask you real quick. Now, you were from, you know, North Hills area.
Yeah.
Like, what mall did you go to?
Well, when I was a little kid, it would be like North Hills Village and Northway Mall.
Was that like something that did they
of course.
to the
train nines? And, you know, you'd all have the train, you know.
I'm sure you know about Century 3 Mall.
Oh, of course.
That was our place that we would go to.
Yeah.
And like to think, like as I was Googling stuff today, just like researching it, it was like pictures were popping up and I'm Jesus, like I can't even believe that at one point that was Century 3 Mall. I mean, Richard Simmons was there at one point.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy to like kind of remember that all them trees, you know, the big Santa. Now I see a picture, you know, it's not Santa, but it was like the Easter Bunny, and there was no one in this entire mall, and it was just this Easter Bunny sitting there with no line. Yeah. And it's just kind of sad a little bit.
They got a good one at Ross Park Mall. Still.
Santa?
Yeah, good Santa.
Yeah.
Good legit looking guy.
That's good.
They still decorate it and stuff like that. Ross Park would be another one that I'd go to when I was a kid.
That was a big thing though. The
Children's
malls.
Palace. We had one on McKnight Road. So I used to go to Children's Palace, which was like a Toys R Us kind of.
What kind of stuff did you like? Like what kind of toys?
Ghostbusters toys and Ninja Turtles, you know, the typical boy toys, you know, I guess, you know,
Old Faithful,
Nintendo, Sega Genesis, all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
I was in the Spy Tech, you know, all that type of cool stuff. You know, but there were so many cool, you know, memories of same thing, like going to the malls and even going and shopping. Like I used to be really good at buying gifts for like older women. So I'd buy like my great aunt something or my grandma's or my mom and, you know, my whoever, godmother or something. Like I was really good at doing. I used to enjoy going to like JCPenney's or Macy's, like the women's section. Shopping for the girls. So I still like doing that. I do that for my wife sometimes. Still, she doesn't like it, but you know, I'll go there and see something you like. You know, it's the thought. You know,
I love buying a gift. Of course, that's like I'm like the
something
guy
that I know that you know.
Yeah, you know that you're gonna love it.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I just can't wait to see your face once you open this up.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I'm always pretty good. I'm a very, very good Christmas gift giver.
I mean, it's easy for me to understand that because you obviously you remember everything. So it's like I'll hear things that my wife says, you know, 8 months ago.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
I
for
just
sure.
burn it into my brain, and then I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna remember.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
It's
Although
the best thing in the
my
world.
wife is better at that than me.
Well, that's fantastic.
That's for sure. She remembers every little thing I mentioned, if I like it or not. You know, I'm like. And I'm impossible to shop for, so it's like because I like everything, you know. But then but not everything, right? So like it's you know, it's tough.
Perfectly complicated.
Yeah, I'm very complicated. Yeah. That's our personal history in Pittsburgh related Christmases.
Yeah.
But you know, did people celebrate Christmas in Pittsburgh always? You know, in the 1750s, were there people having Christmas parties here in Pittsburgh?
I can't wait to learn.
Well, I found there are earlier celebrations that happened on Fort Pitt and some other times like that, but not in the tradition kind of like we would know it today.
Yeah.
The earliest thing, I didn't even write it down. I should have, but because it is a story that really involves Christmas. But George Washington spent his Christmas here in 1753, which is interesting to read about. And he wrote about in his diary of he was almost frozen to death during this time period, which is the worst Christmas he ever had. But he had that here in Pittsburgh in 1753. So they, he didn't really talk about anything traditionally in that. So it seems that like they didn't really celebrate it that much. I didn't see the first kind of mention of Christmas in Pittsburgh newspapers till the 1830s.
1830.
Yeah, but they went full on Christmas mode here in Pittsburgh. This is an article from 1835. It says, in consequence of the Christmas coming on Sunday, Saturday and Monday will be celebrated as Christmas Day in the Pennsylvania Museum, which is the corner of Market and 4th Street, which is Market Square, oddly enough. So they still celebrate it there. I was just there last week for Krampus Fest, on which occasion it will be magnificently decorated with evergreens, flowers, and etc. And in the evening will be brilliantly illuminated. And a band of music players will be engaged to play during the day and evening, and splendid expositions of artificial fireworks and phantasmagoria will be given several times during the day and evening.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, doesn't sound that bad.
1830, they used the word phantasmagoria.
Phantasmagoria. Yeah. That's why it's mainly the only reason why I brought this article, so I could say that word out loud.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
1830.
1830s. They were going full on out with fireworks and light up night and trees and Christmas celebrations downtown.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you have any idea when the first mention of Santa Claus in general was?
In Pittsburgh?
No, not even just in Pittsburgh. But
well, yeah. I mean, it comes from the New Netherlands and the Dutch.
When was that, though?
1600s.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So for 50 years or so, maybe even less, I think it is. I don't know the exact, under 50 years, the Dutch, inhabited all of New York, and they called that place New Amsterdam. And there was maybe like 200 something families. 4 of them were mine. But they, including one guy who was banished from life from the city of New York. Just a story for another day. Anyways, a guy named, they called him they called him the Doots, or the Dutchman, for he was so Dutch that they just called him the Dutchman was his nickname. Real long story. Anyways, I found that out recently. That's why I brought it up. Anyways, they brought with them these traditions.
Yeah.
From the Dutch aspect of Saint Nicholas, and in the story, and that Sinterklaas, with that tradition of, and literally the guy in the red suit and the look of him and his carrying of things and his pipe and everything that goes along with him, all comes based on that Dutch tradition from that early part of New York City, which was once called New Amsterdam. But that's kind of how the origin of Santa, as per se, kind of came around. But even then, it was only celebrated by just those kind of ethnic groups, and not just by everybody. That wouldn't really happen until much, much later on. And then Santa Claus, as we know him, I mean, that wouldn't happen until Coca-Cola would draw him that way.
I guess so.
Later
right?
on. Yeah, I actually do have. I'll show you what they thought Santa Claus looked like in the 1880s. Kind of the same,
Oh, wow.
a little bit.
When's that from?
This would be 1885.
Wow.
And then there was another one, kind of just like a jolly old Saint Nick type of looking character.
Wow.
But I can't just see the rest of the article because it has to do with the last story.
That's all right. I can look at it.
But anyways, that kind of current image only really came around when Coca-Cola started doing their ads, for Santa Claus, that you'd see that real great image that looks like it does today.
Yeah.
That was the first time. I mean, the first time anyone even knew kind of what he generally looked like, that came around the 1850s. And that was in the Clement Moore's, Night Before Christmas poem.
Yeah.
That poem is the first known description of what Santa's reindeer are even named.
Really?
That all came from that article. Yeah. From that poem that he wrote.
Wow.
I tracked down when it was first published in the Post-Gazette too. And I usually post on Christmas Eve, the actual newspaper clipping from 1854 when it came out. Because that's how it was published. It was published in newspapers first, across the country.
Wow.
But yeah, so C. Clement Moore was the guy who kind of came up with that legend of, the reindeer and, him putting his nose, finger on his nose and all that type of stuff. And the fact that he was jolly and a little fat and an elf and rosy red cheeks. This all comes from, the pipe, everything comes from that poem.
That's crazy.
Before that, he was just like a German nymph, kind of mystical, woodsy-esque, gnome-looking kind of guy.
Yeah, but it really wasn't anything what it is now.
Nothing, no. And that's really 20th century type of stuff is the way we know it today.
Yeah.
It's modern, our kind of concept of like how Santa goes to every kid's house. Like this was never a thought. They never came across people's minds during the Civil War era. Santa didn't go visit your house.
He had bigger fish to fry.
yeah, exactly. So, it is interesting to think about, what did they do then? Did they sell it? Or they probably did, but it wasn't with the same kind of conceptual Santa Claus as we kind of know him.
Yeah.
It was more like, asking for charity for help. I didn't bring it, but because some of the letters are pretty long, but I found published in the Pittsburgh papers some letters to Santa Claus that were from Pittsburgh kids from 1897.
Wow.
And they talk about how they want a hobby horse or they want a dolly or, a little baby carriage that they could push around or something. Some kids in there just wanted a Christmas tree because they were that broke or that poor. And they just wrote in the paper, please, Santa, we don't want anything for Christmas. All we want is a Christmas tree.
Jeez.
Yeah. Other ones say, I just want one pair of shoes.
Yeah.
If you could bring a lollipop or some piece of candy for my little brother, that'd be nice. So
wow.
So you see these kind of tragic Christmas stories appearing in the newspapers, which it's sad. But then we'll talk about how you could do things and how you could give back, because there is a story about how that happened. But first, here's a little factoids. I'll tell you too. Has it ever snowed on Christmas in Pittsburgh?
Yeah. So the last was 2020.
I think. Yeah.
I think that was last 2000 the last was 2020, and that broke the record. That was from 1890 or 1910 or something like that, but it snowed 3.5 inches, I think.
Yeah. It's only snowed. Let's see, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13 times.
13 times
in all of recorded Pittsburgh weather history. 13 times. There's been snow arrived on that day.
Wow.
Yeah, sad.
And then before 2020, it was 2017.
Right. Now there's snow on the ground, but not falling down, coming from the sky on Christmas Day. That only happened 13 total times since 1890 was the earliest they have on record. 1890, 1892 it happened, 1902, 1909, 1917, 1919.
And then global warming started to creep in.
Right. So, the snowfall is kind of fun facts too. So when do you think is the earliest snowfall on record?
I have no idea.
September 23rd.
September 23rd?
1989. Yeah, there was snow. The earliest ever in Pittsburgh. When's the latest?
Probably, I would say probably early May.
June 1st, 1967.
No way.
There was a trace. So it counts.
Yeah, that's still crazy.
Is that crazy? Yeah.
June 1st, 1967.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
So now, are you familiar with the song Silver Bells?
I know the song, yeah.
Yeah, of course you do. Most people know it, right? Silver Bells, right? Dean Martin singing it, Bing Crosby, so many different people. It all started with Bob Hope was the first person to actually sing it. But the story about how that song came to be, do you know the story about that?
No.
Well, what if I told you that Silver Bells is loosely based on a man's experience in downtown Pittsburgh?
Really?
Yes. A guy named Joel Jacob Levison, better known as Jay Livingston, stage name. He was born 1915 in McDonald, PA, not that far away. And as a kid, he studied in Pittsburgh with Pittsburgh Symphony. This guy who worked there for playing the piano, and he studied piano composition. And this guy would inspire him to become join up a band. And that time, it was 1930s. By that time, he could join up with a dance band, playing some piano, music and stuff. And
this is 1930 when this happened.
1930s. Well, yeah, 1933 is when he ended up going to college and met this man who would become his forever lifetime songwriting partner. This guy named Ray Evans. And they would just do little jingles here and there, and they would write some small music and stuff until they moved to Los Angeles and got a job working for NBC, some of the big networks, and started writing music for movies and songs that would be featured in movies. 1950, there was this brand new movie coming out that was going to be a Christmas movie, and it takes place in modern day times, starring Bob Hope. It was called The Lemon Drop Kid. And then in the scene in the movie takes place downtown. And he's like a Salvation Army store, like Santa Claus, dressed on the side of the street with a bell and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And they thought about it. This Jacob Jay Livingston, he's like, if you look at the catalog of Christmas songs, there's never been one up until that point ever written about Christmas in a city. It's always been Christmas in the woods, dashing over the fields of snow. It's always in a church somewhere. It's always something, sailing ships. It's always something else. It's never about, the people or the city, like a modern Christmas song.
Yeah.
Something, that people could relate to today. So he thought about like the bells that you hear at the Salvation Army. He thinks of the bells of the church.
That's where that comes from?
Bells of the sleighs, yes. And so he writes down the song. He comes up with the melody. They come up with the song. First person he shows is his wife. And he goes, honey, here, check. You're not going to believe this song. It's a great song. You ready? Tinkle bells, right? And his wife's like, what are you doing? You can't call it tinkle bells. It's like, don't you know what tinkle means? And I said, I guess you're right. He says, you should call it silver bells. So he did. And that's how that song was written.
That's crazy.
But he grew up in Pittsburgh. So what else could he be referring to, if he's thinking about back to your own childhood memories of coming downtown and seeing all the bells, the windows, the kids playing, the snow, It's about Pittsburgh, yeah. His brother would later go on to move to L.A. and Hollywood, would become an executive at Capitol Records and the VP at NBC. He was the person who was responsible for bringing the Beatles to the Capitol Records and from England for the first time. He also went on to produce a show like Bonanza and Mission Impossible and all these other big-time 1960s TV shows. And that Jay Livingston, the same guy who wrote Silver Bells, he would write the song like Que Sera, Sera. He wrote Mona Lisa.
Really?
Yeah. So it has a deep Pittsburgh connection, to that.
Some guy from McDonald.
Some guy from McDonald, PA, yeah. We went to McDonald High School.
Wow.
Yeah, he wrote Silver Bells, and maybe about Pittsburgh, maybe not. I'm not saying it, it could be about, specifically that scene in the movie.
That's sick, though.
However, it's pretty cool, yeah.
That's one of the hitters. That's one of the main hitters, Silver Bells.
Every time I hear it now, all I think about is two things. One is that, yes, they're talking about Pittsburgh. The other is, of course, Tinkle Bells. Forever.
Tinkle Bells.
Forever, the song is now Tinkle Bells in my mind.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Silver Bells.
Is that neat?
Yeah, what a hitter. When did you find that out? While ago?
I was looking up sheet music, and I saw that this one thing that I had, I have a giant. I play piano, so it's I've had albums and albums of Christmas music throughout the years. And I was reading this the Silver Bells, playing Silver Bells a couple Christmases ago, for myself, and I see it was written by this guy, and I said it was published in Pittsburgh. It was a Pittsburgh connection. I was like, Pittsburgh, that's weird. Maybe it was just the company that published the music, and then I researched, and it turns out it was from here.
My goodness,
that was cool. And then I was like, and there's more songs that this guy wrote too that are just as famous. But Mona Lisa, that's a pretty big one. And
wow, you just happened to come across Silver Bells being
all that
from
type
around
of stuff
here.
Yeah, all that type of stuff you just kind of happen to come across. The best story, which I will, the last one, I'll keep on, egging it on, is a story that is not found in a single history book ever written about the history of Pittsburgh. It's a story that is not published anywhere. It's has never been talked about since I talked about it a couple years ago when I came across it. And I've done so much more research since then, of even finding out about it. It's this story will blow your mind. I mean, and it has to do with one of these hidden figures, these hidden Santas.
Hidden Santas.
These people who, that you, like you and me,
yeah,
who have this love of Christmas somehow, and feel this need to give.
Okay? Well, before we even get to all that,
before we get there,
I want to talk about I feel like Pittsburgh is the main things that you think about whenever Christmas is coming around, light up night. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's the first thing that sticks into my mind is what is Pittsburgh affiliated with as far as whenever I hear the word Christmas. Right. Light up night I thought was sick, and then I started reading through some stuff, and then there is, there's some interesting thing that goes on with that. When did that, do you have any idea when that came out?
1953.
1953.
Yeah, it's the first official light up night, although there was, and they've been doing it every year since, but there were, every time they did some kind of Christmas thing downstairs, downtown, they would make some sort of light up event happen, but it wasn't an official light up event until they made it, the Pittsburgh actual downtown partnership type of people, Visit Pittsburgh type, the Chamber of Commerce,
yeah,
are the people who put that event and made it okay, every year it's going to happen on this day. type of thing.
Now, I was reading November 21st, 1960.
Yeah.
That's where it came up for me.
No. Yeah, it is 53. I know for sure.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Now, this said that I was looking at was 1960. It said it was the first light up night. And then it said that, after that, where does that come from? Why does it say 1960?
Well, you have multiple light up nights.
Yeah.
So, for example, 1929, there was a light up night that was advertised, but they never repeated that event. And then you go on and all these different events would go on. The first time that big tree, the light up, the orange tree down there was lit up was 1960, which is why they based it on that day. But they've had Christmas events and things going down, published, yearly since 1953.
Yeah.
And then photographs, all that stuff as well, which is pretty cool.
Wow. Yeah, I was reading about Patty Craddy. She was a female Santa that they used to promote the event.
Yeah.
And then it said it ran through the 60s and the 70s. And then in the mid-70s, they said there was an energy crisis, which shut it down for 9 years. I thought that was crazy.
Yeah.
And then they, got it going back again because Mayor how do you say his name?
Caligiuri.
Caligiuri said that the city's new skyline deserved to be highlighted. Is that accurate?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, all that's accurate. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It keeps on coming and going. There's, can you call it a 60th or 55th or whatever?
It's hearsay.
I guess, it's just based upon let's pick a date.
Oh, I thought it was so cool to hear about that because, as I'm looking through and reading all these things, you see, the window displays from Horns and then Kaufman's and, I guess that was a huge, that was the big thing to do.
I have a footage I'll show you. You could share it. That it's the newsreel footage from, I think it's 1955 of downtown Pittsburgh, of the Christmas displays, of Santa, the works.
You have a video of
I do. Yeah. So
where do you even find this?
Well, I'll spend the time sometimes when I search YouTube. Number one, I've been teaching a class now every Friday at a high school. And, you get to talk to all these kids all the time and, high school kids. And I tell them, we all have YouTube. It's like how many people go, when you open it up, you just see all these recommendations, you just go through your recommendation list or you go through maybe your subscriptions, maybe. Usually it's just whatever YouTube is telling you based upon whatever you previously watched, it's not, or it's suggesting whatever. Rarely are you searching for things or trying to find the answer to something. And that's how I use YouTube. And I told these kids too, think about that next time you go on YouTube. Instead of watching 10 things you don't know about SpongeBob, search for, why is the sky blue or whatever. You can use it to answer any question you have. You basically have unlimited knowledge at your fingertips and you're not, nobody is using it to its full extent. So sometimes if I have enough time in the day, I'll sit there and I'll just type in the word Pittsburgh 1900, Pittsburgh 1901, Pittsburgh 1902, Pittsburgh 1903, Pittsburgh 1904. and that's how I came across a lot of stuff for Pittsburgh related things. So I typed in Pittsburgh 1955. That's what popped up.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I have another one from 1977, which is pretty cool. But you see so many fascinating things. I mean, there's just hundreds and hundreds of videos. I try to make curate a little playlist on YouTube of historic Pittsburgh things that I've tracked down.
Yeah.
So, and just keep them all there, which is pretty neat. But Pittsburgh and their relationship to Santa Claus, and Christmas. And, you have to think about where Pittsburgh was not in terms of location, but in terms of society.
Yeah.
In, let's say, the 1890s. Okay. When Carnegie Steel was still going strong, you had all that industry going on down here, all this money, wealth, all this stuff coming through Pittsburgh. And, how do you celebrate Christmas when you have nothing, and especially what happens to the more unfortunate of people during Christmas time.
Because there was a pretty big population of unfortunate people back then, right?
Yeah. You know what? And I'm still skipping ahead. So I'm gonna save that for the last part because I'm just teasing it now.
This all has stuff to do with the last part.
Well, I'm telling you because it's that good of a story.
Well, don't tell me it yet.
I'm not gonna tell you.
Now, whenever you whenever you're thinking of Christmas and whenever you're a younger kid, now where did your family ever go down to light up night?
See, 100%. We used to go to Harwood Acres and see the light up shows there, then go downtown to light up night and go to all the different stores and see the window displays. just like all the other Pittsburgh kids, back in the day.
Are you familiar with a brand called Halco? Okay, so I'm pumped about this. Halco Inc. is a brand from Bell Vernon, PA, that was the last American-made manufacturer of Santa Claus suits.
Oh, no way.
All right. They closed, I believe, in 2007. Originally, they opened in 1948, and they ran under the original owner until 1975. And then it was bought by a guy named Alan Hoffman. Okay. Alan Hoffman ran this thing up until 2007. But at one time, they had 70 people sewing Santa suits.
Wow.
And they said that over 80% of all the Santa suits in the world came from Bell Vernon, PA.
Wow.
And I thought that was so wild to think
That's
about
pretty
that,
cool.
because if you look it up now, if you type in Halco, that's like the standard of Santa suits, and it makes me sad that mine isn't a Halco,
right.
But I am going to invest in one probably. But
yeah.
I thought that was so wild. But
It is.
Thinking about that compared to what happens now, because ultimately they closed because they had to, people were going overseas for all these.
Right.
You have these monthly costume stores and everything. But the guy that I interviewed, him and his partner own Spotlight Costumes.
Okay.
And that's a place down in West End. And they told me
Yeah.
about this. And I thought it was so crazy to think that like 80% of these were coming from stone's throw away. Now, you as a young kid, were you like someone that would go wait in line, sit on Santa's lap, tell him what's going on?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have every photo still. I mean, I'm a very nostalgic guy.
Yeah.
So like I look at my old photos a lot, even and I have every Santa ever taken. I mean, it was a big deal. I remember one year, I think I wore like a jingle bell, like necklace as a kid for like a month straight, I mean, no joke. I mean, I was like obsessed with that Christmas morning. And same thing, I mean, with the family coming over to the house, my grandmother and my great uncle would come and stay with us for a week during that time period as a kid too. And my great uncle, I'd only see him that time period of year ever. I never saw him outside of that week of December, ever. My whole life, not even after he died. I never saw him ever other than that one week. And he was a very unusual guy. He was an English professor in some Baltimore college, and had very bad OCD and stuff like this. And he was just like an interesting, weird, unusual guy. He taught me how to play chess.
Oh, wow.
He, as like a 6-year-old, that he bought me dictionaries as gifts, things like that.
That type of guy.
With like inscribed, important messages about like, like using language in your words and looking for the details in language. And I just found, in fact, the other day, I just found a letter that he wrote to me when I was 7 years old. And it talks about just the English language in general, and how he knows that I'm not going to understand the letter that he's writing to me, but to have my parents maybe explain it to him, and talking about like how to write a rough draft, and how to like.
My God.
I mean, it's insane. It's if you read, I posted on my regular Facebook. If you go on there and like look, I posted that letter. You should read it. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, I gotta look at that.
All those people that also is part of my Christmas memories is my grandmother, my mom's mom, and her brother, my great uncle, and I always think back to their childhoods and like their story, which ties into our last story. So
don't even go in there yet.
Yeah.
Now, whenever I asked you before, but like, do you have any sort of like memory of when the adulthood kind of, because you said that, you realized the meaning of Christmas when you were 19, but like, what about those times from whenever you were like 13, 14, 15?
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
do
you remember?
I was very, very, no, I do not. I also am in that same crowd where I don't remember like stopping.
Yeah.
And I can remember like even being older, like 13, 14 and stuff, and still like thinking, and Christmas was a big deal to my mom. Like it was my mom's favorite thing on earth is Christmas. And like, she's like a little girl, when you give presents and stuff still, she's 78, so it's like, but watching her being happy and stuff was part of it, and everything that involved, but that lead up to Christmas and just everything that was involved. I never really lost the spirit of Christmas.
Yeah.
I never really saw Santa as a jolly old guy who came down a chimney. I didn't have a chimney.
Yeah.
I didn't have a fireplace growing up. So, you hear these songs and you're like, well, how the hell is he getting in my house?
Well, you never seen the Santa Claus with Tim Allen?
Well,
it morphs in a wall.
Yeah. But, back then, there was no movie. Our Santa Claus movie was Dudley Moore Santa Claus.
See, even as a young kid, it's like I didn't have a fireplace either, but like that type of shit was like, lost in my
that's what I mean.
mind.
That didn't matter to me. Yeah, of course, because he still came, it's still there.
Now, did you have any sort of like traditions where like now I see on like, this phone is a pit, but I see all these cool things and it's like, it's a double-edged sword because now I see, all these, one person comes with an idea and then it spreads over TikTok. And now I see these people taking boots and spreading flour and it looks like footprints going up to a tree.
Well, there's an important thing to the evolution of Christmas in a human being.
Yeah.
You have your own childhood. You have your thing that happens. Then you have your teen years where it's kind of questionable, and then all of a sudden you find out the news that maybe this was all just some kind of crazy thing like aliens or something.
Yeah.
That someone told it's the Easter Bunny or whatever.
Tooth Fairy.
And, and then you could be mad, you could be mad at your parents or something for not telling you or these things could happen, but instead of my parents telling me, that just never happened. So it was just like, it was just never an issue, never brought up.
Yeah. And
I'm not a religious man, so it wasn't like blind faith. And
you weren't
Santa.
like a kid that like tried to stay up one night and like catch Santa?
Of course. Yeah, of course. And I mean, I don't know if it really happened, but one time I was probably 12 or 13. And that was right then, it was like my favorite era, like between the ages of 10 to 15, kind of like that time.
Just when your brain is starting to, where you could get a little bit different.
And I remembered, going to sleep in my room and I remember like, it was Christmas Eve and I was, there was no, my bedroom was on the second floor. So there was like no way for someone to climb up a ladder. My dad was like a big guy, so he never was on a ladder. And my mom, she trips over like a front step, let alone like trying to
say she ain't climbing up the ladder.
Nothing. Yeah, and we didn't even have. I mean, we maybe have a ladder back then. I don't know, but I never saw it. So it was like. I swear to you, I heard something hit my roof and I heard jingle bells like coming from my window on the second story of my house. I swear to God. like that. So that was like the one and only time where like maybe I hallucinated like a Christmas miracle.
You conjured it up in your mind, almost like the boogeyman.
Yes, I made Christmas become real. Exactly. Yeah, I conjured up the jingle bell.
Wow.
But you still carry on this, like why I mentioned that you go through these different levels is because and I remember how that felt. And I know, like, who knows? I mean, it could have been my parents throwing a bell at the window or something. And I just didn't know.
Yeah. If I had children, I would be doing gangster stuff.
So that's what happens. So the next part of Christmas evolution is when you have kids.
Yeah.
Now, you could only understand it when you have them. And it's like having a dog, but it's different. And I'm telling you, that's where you find out that Santa Claus does exist.
Yeah.
When you find out that you are now Santa Claus.
And you could create.
You are the one that's responsible for creating magic at Christmas.
Wow.
To your kids. It's up to you,
Now, before we even get to the kids though, I'm curious, as an adult, we're talking about 19, things like that. Are you someone like, are you still, even whenever you're single and everything like that, you're decorating?
Oh yeah.
Are you into it?
Oh, always. Yeah, always. Okay. Yeah. Always, in the festive spirit, per se.
Yeah. Are you a Christmas Story fan?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay. I once watched it. I tried to watch it the entire 24 hours that one day on TV. Like I tried to do the entire 24. I think they do on Christmas Day.
Wow.
Or they started like a midnight Christmas, on Christmas.
No,
I have done that. And I know every line. I've seen Christmas Vacation on. I had a tape that had Christmas Vacation and Bill and Ted on it, like the same tape.
That's a double hitter,
VHS
right there.
tape. I watched it so much as a kid, it just fell apart one day. Like it just disintegrated. It was horrible.
Were you like, now I know that you said that you're kind of a picky eater. Now back then, were you like a baking family? Like were your families like baking cookies and things like that?
They always did. My mom would make pizzelles. Oh yeah, all different types. Not just the gross kind. But vanilla ones and all the different types. And then my grandma would make some cookies and things like that, like Russian tea cookies and all the cool stuff.
Were your grandparents kind of into the Christmas stuff?
Not at all. my grandmother on my dad's side, we called that my my hunky side. They're all Polish and Austrian and from Eastern European side. So going up there for Christmas was totally different than my family down here. It was like number one, they didn't have well, they did. They had dinner, but they also had supper in addition to dinner.
What? What's the difference?
So you'd show up there like at noon, like this would be Christmas holiday. You're going to go visit my dad's parents, and his whole family lives up in Latrobe. And so like all my cousins and they're all older than me and all my aunts and uncles and everything. And then she would start cooking like, who knows, the day before, I don't know. And like, and same thing with Thanksgiving. She would do the same thing, but it would be like an all day event, and you would eat dinner like around 3. And then you'd have supper like around 6 or something like that,
Wow.
But like, and then you'd snack in between and stuff like that. So
of course.
Like the memories of going up to visit family, like literally going over the hills through the woods to go visit my grandma's house. You know? Like as a kid during Christmas time, that always was big special for me. But then just having that time with my other other side of my grandparents got divorced in the 60s or something like that. So that was just like my grandma. On my mom's side, and she was like a big inspiration for my whole life. Not just for Christmas, but like everything, like my love of old movies or
oh, that's
cool stuff. She was a really cool person, which I'll talk a little bit about in our next story.
Now, if you could, I'm curious, what's like the best Christmas gift you've ever received? Like where something you walked out and you were like, holy shit.
Yeah. Wow. That's a tough one. Christmas gift.
I'll cut out any downtime.
No, I know. I'm thinking.
I should have told you to think about that beforehand.
I mean, as a kid, that's different because as a kid, you get these, you get PlayStation or something.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm talking about. I want to know as a young kid, like, what was one of them?
I did get Nintendo before anybody else. Like I got it before Super Mario Brothers even came out.
Oh, wow.
So I got it with like that gyro guy and the robot, and Gyromite was a game that came with, and Duck Hunt.
I've never heard of Gyromite.
It was like the first game that ever came out. My dad I hit it big in like 1987 or something in 88. It was able to get one of the original ones.
Wow.
That particular Christmas.
You still have it?
I don't. I sold it to my uncle when I was like 14 or something.
I know. I did some dumbass shit.
I had like 50 games, and 50 games for Nintendo was like a big deal.
I sold my brother my N64 with all of my games for like $80 whenever I was like 18.
Exactly.
I needed a quick come up.
Right.
It's like, and now you're like $300 if you want to buy that shit right now.
Yeah, exactly. So, but that was a pretty big gift, I remember. And then,
you ever get any Nerf guns?
Oh yeah, of course. I got Super Soaker.
Okay, yeah, because I
wasn't
the
main Super Soaker.
There's some adults that didn't want to, condone any of them guns or projectiles or anything like that.
No.
We were a big Nerf gun family.
Yeah,
we would, everyone put all the Nerf guns that we would have that everyone would win. You'd put on the ground. Everyone could pick one. You'd have your bullets.
My kids are like that. I have like I have like multiple buckets just full.
Oh yeah,
like an armory of Nerf.
Kids are spoiled now because they have chain guns now. I remember one of my favorite gifts of all time was something. It probably was my brother's gift actually. It was a Nerf. It was called the Secret Shot.
Yeah.
And it was like, it looked like a 9mm. It was lime green. And then it had a holder on the top that you would flip to the side.
Nice.
And the commercial was like, some kid pops out of a trash can and like all the bad guys are like, freeze. And this kid puts his hands up and then he just turns the butt of the gun and it shoots the dart at him. And you're like, that's the coolest thing
you
in the
gotta
world.
have that. Yeah, exactly.
But Nerf guns were always something big. I remember getting an N64 that was like huge. I remember a bicycle was like my big thing, but other than that, it's like, the standard things. I loved yo-yos. I loved all that.
Oh yeah.
Were you having were you someone that what type of Christmas tree did you have? Did you have
always, in my house as a kid, it had to be a real tree.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And now my parents always try to get us to buy an artificial tree. Always. I remember at Pool City,
Oh, yeah. That's where I bought mine whenever I moved into this house.
Yeah. It was like we would go there and get Christmas lights or something, but not the tree. They'd wanted to get one, like a nice tree, But I remember luckily my mom wrote a lot of things down when I was a kid. And I have like a couple books filled with stuff of like, here's what you did in 4th grade. Here's what you did in 5th grade, 6th grade. Like detail, like here's my friends, here's the sports I did, here's memorable events or whatever.
That's awesome.
And she wrote about in there. I think I must have been in like 7th grade even. And it was 7th grade. Yeah, I guess it would have been that they were going to finally dive in and get like a artificial tree. And like I refused, like apparently threw a hissy fit or something. I refused. And my mom said, okay, well, then that seals the deal. We're not going to get one.
And that's why I asked that, because like I was curious, because there was always different classes of
same thing
trees.
happened to my kids today. Not today, but on Wednesday.
They wanted a real tree?
Well, my wife and I were thinking, like, if we got an artificial tree, we could have that stuff up, like, right at Thanksgiving, just like you said.
Yeah.
I was like, we could put it we could keep it up all year. We could just make it a holiday tree, And so we told the kids, like, hey, what do you think if we go to, we'll get a real fancy, one that LED with a remote, and you can make it, dance to music, And they're like, what are you talking about? We have to get a real tree, That's not Christmas unless we get a real tree. And we're like, all right.
See, growing up, we had an artificial tree that was the worst.
Yeah.
I almost vowed never to get one because of how bad it sucked putting it together. Because you had them shitty metal.
Well, they'd always itch.
Yeah, and they always itched, and the branches, you had to bend them all the right way because you pack them all in the box the year before. So it was always a pain in the ass. But the Santa that I just interviewed, he said that his tree always had to be a white tree with all pink lights.
No. Wow.
And it's interesting to hear that because for me, my tree, I have a bunch of ornaments, there's gremlin ornaments, there's blockbuster things on there.
I got Ghostbusters, I got Beetlejuice on, I got Macho Man Randy Savage on my tree.
Oh, yeah. That's the best.
Yeah.
And that's the best part about being an adult is
exactly.
I went to Hallmark today and I just bought a new Gremlins ornament.
I do have all my ornaments from when I was a kid, and they're most fragile things on earth. I tell my kids, don't throw anything at the tree. If you throw something at that tree and hit my ornament from 1982, that'd be the end of Christmas as I know it.
And that's the way that I get it. It's
for real.
I just really.
Did it ever happen to you? Have you ever accidentally broken a prize, Christmas?
I broken my
decoration or
pasta, my ornament that I made out of pasta in preschool.
Yeah.
My parents still had one. They still had paper ones that I made in kindergarten.
Oh, yeah. I got doves and things like that.
And it's cool because I feel like we're fortunate enough that we had that, but it's wild because there's some people that just don't have that at all.
Yeah, that's part of our last story.
Yeah. keep listening. Now for you to, become an adult and take on that role of Santa Claus, what was that like the first year you did that?
Well, I mean, it was incredible. So number one, I always tried to, I never had that same type of tradition. It wasn't like I overnight all of a sudden just became Santa. Well, it was. I mean, it was essentially what happened. It was I married a girl who had 2 kids.
Yeah,
and I'm single.
How old were they whenever you 1 and 2? Oh, okay.
And I go in there that first year, and all of a sudden, I'm the Santa Claus.
Yeah, you're the dude.
I went from nothing to a dad and Santa Claus in 1 year.
Yeah,
and I took on that responsibility. But it was my first immediate thought is that okay, well now I have to give these kids the greatest Christmas they've ever had.
Yeah.
And continue to do that and lead up to it and do the whole thing with Santa and writing the letters and going to Santa breakfast here and there and doing all that stuff. But then you start to realize how impactful this is becoming.
Yeah.
And then when you do give these things, to them and they open it up, and their face on Christmas morning and how happy they are. And that makes you happy. It gives you the joy of Christmas. And it's different than receiving a gift. I don't get any good gifts anymore. Really. Yeah. I really don't. I mean, my wife gives me very meaningful, purposeful gifts. That I
get what you're saying though, but you're not getting a Nerf gun.
Yeah. I'm not getting a awesome, signed Clockwork Orange poster or something cool, but
dropping hints right now. Dropping hints right now.
Yeah. Hints. But the, that alone, and that's what you first find out when you first become a parent and like a Santa, you find out that just mentioning the word Christmas does things to kids' eyes,
Yeah.
Using the Santa as a boogeyman,
I remember
be good or else you'll be on the naughty list, right?
Oh yeah.
That is true. He's the festive boogeyman, but he is one.
That's true.
There's no joke about it. They even manifest that as the Krampus, or Black Pete, his traveler.
Yeah. Wow.
So they had an opposite to Santa that would travel with them for a long time. And it's funny is when I talk now with the kids that they're older, I talk about traditions from all over the world.
Yeah.
Who was Saint Nicholas? Because it is important to understand who this man from Turkey was. Right? Did you know that he was from Turkey?
No.
He's from Turkey.
Saint Nicholas?
Saint Nicholas, yeah. And of Myra, Saint Nicholas of Myra was his name, or Nicholas, of Mira's, where Mira's in Turkey. And he would travel the Middle East and do all these things. And there I found this story about, to become a saint, you have to perform miracles. You have to have miracles attributed to you. And a lot of them are very, super silly. One of his miracles that made him a saint was he was at this meeting of prominent religious figures from all over, and like bishops from different towns and villages all came together to like meet. And part of the popular philosophy at the time was about the Holy Trinity, right? And what those things mean, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and that together they make up a God, right?
Yeah.
Or God. Whereas there was another very popular belief where they were like completely separate things, like God included, so they weren't like all unified. They were more like there really physically was a Holy Spirit.
Individual
not
things.
Individuals and not like a combined, Trinity.
Yeah.
Nicholas, like wholeheartedly believed in this Trinity concept, which was an alternative thought 1,000 years ago. I mean, it was like still taboo to think like that. But apparently this guy was talking so mean and so angry against the Holy Trinity that St. Nicholas went up and slapped him in court. And because of that event, that thing that he did defending the Holy Trinity is why he became a saint. It's one of the things.
He bitch slapped that guy?
It's because he bitch slapped the guy is legitimately one of the things that gives him like the credence, because he did it to protect the Holy Trinity.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was a fact I didn't know.
That's crazy.
So, and there's a lot more to him. I mean, that's fascinating to learn about, like just his journey of who this guy was, like in Syria and Turkey and like all these ancient.
When did you starting to like dive into this whole like, the history of Christmas? Because, we talked about this like 6 years ago. You kind of started down the odd Pittsburgh trail.
Yeah.
But it's like, when did Christmas kind of get into that?
The very beginning.
First year?
Yeah. Well, like, as soon as, I started running for Pittsburgh based stuff, first, time I started doing it. I mean, like first December, I had a page that I devoted it like every day to Christmas or Pittsburgh related winter facts. And I started finding these stories that were just
random
things that you'd only find in the newspapers. You wouldn't find them outside of the newspapers, like on some blog or on some website or Facebook or wherever, or Wikipedia or nowhere. You just found these stories nowhere. This next story I'll read to you is not the last story. This is my second to last story. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is a story about a guy named Pittsburgh guy named Judge Michael Mossmano.
Mossmano.
You ever heard this name?
No.
Okay, that's okay. Okay, but you'll know this guy's name after this story. Judge Michael Mossmano. Okay, the Post-Gazette described him as one of the state's most colorful and controversial public figures who brought to every major public issue a passionate and at times chaotic, as in Don Quixote, chaotic concern for the underdog. This is what this obituary that I'm going to read to you about this guy. Why I'm reading you about this obituary. Now, have you ever seen, I'm sure you have, seen the movie Miracle on 34th Street?
I've actually never watched that.
Wow. Okay. So, but you know what it's kind of about.
I know it's all about.
And the remake, in the 1990s with
Matilda.
Dr. John Hammond from Jurassic Park as Santa. He plays Santa Claus in that movie.
Wow.
Yeah.
I never realized that until now.
Jurassic Park. Yeah, that guy.
Holy shit.
Yes, I know. Anyways.
That's him.
That is him. Yeah.
Wow. I've never in my life put that together until now. I could see the cover of the VHS.
Yeah, that's him.
Wow.
Yeah. So and of course, in the first version of it, which came out in the 40s, was by Natalie Wood, was the little girl. Natalie Wood would go on to be in West Side Story and all these other things. And anyways, that story of that movie, which is about a Macy's store, department store Santa Claus that they hire, like the Macy's in New York hires a guy, to be Santa Claus, who goes by the name of Kris Kringle, on his legal name type of thing. He shows up there, and these kids that start visiting him start noticing that like he's a little different than some of the other store Santa Clauses. Number one, he's got a real beard, He seems to know little things about you that maybe other people didn't know, or other Santas, maybe parents don't even know.
Wow.
Something maybe you asked or wished for or wanted, And kids start believing that this guy who they hired, knowing that he's like a fake Santa. They hired this guy, but people start legitimately believing in him, including this little girl whose mother, who's like the executive at Macy's, stopped believing in Santa Claus when she was like 5 years old because of some like traumatic event that happened when she was a little girl. So she refuses to believe in Christmas and have the Christmas spirit and to believe in Santa Claus. And she has a kid now. And the little girl, of course, becomes infatuated with this guy claiming Santa Claus. And Santa Claus himself knows, of course, about her mother.
Yeah.
And this whole kind of thing. Eventually, I'm not giving really anything away by saying that so many people believe in this guy as being Santa Claus that people start writing letters to him. And he eventually gets arrested and put in a court case, like Judge Judy style. And at the jury, the mail post office comes and brings like, 15, 20 bags of letters that kids specifically all over the world have written this particular Santa Claus at that Macy's, not other Santa Clauses, not the Santa Claus, like him. Like they believe he's Santa Claus.
Jeez.
So the judge makes it, a real thing. And he says, okay, he says case dismissed or whatever, is that there is a Santa Claus,
Wow.
Now, there's also a very, very famous newspaper article where some girl named Virginia, was writing to the newspaper saying her family didn't have anything and she doesn't believe in Santa Claus, he would come to her house. And this journalist in the newspaper wrote, yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus, and he went into great depths to explain about what that means and how, even though you don't have nothing, and how Santa Claus can still bring the spirit, inside of you. And these kind of, good stories, and Miracle on 34th Street is, of course, a fiction. It's not a real story. But it was based on a real event, which occurred in Pittsburgh.
No way.
Now it involves this guy I'm talking about, Judge Michael Mosmano. So, as a young lawyer, he was a Stowe Township native. He was part of the defense team, that worked on the unsuccessful appeal of the death sentence imposed upon anarchist Sacco and Vanzetti. So he was involved in that case, which is a very famous anti-immigrant
I don't have no idea who that is.
Just like people were angry at certain ethnic groups back in those times, it was against Italians. And there was these two people that might have been innocent, convicted of killing somebody, and called them Sacco and Vanzetti. And they went to maybe unjustly to the death, to their death, not committing a crime. It became like an anti-immigrant thing. And this guy represented them in trial. Okay.
Wow.
As a state legislator thereafter and became an author, he successfully led a fight to ban the coal and iron private police, which were a private law enforcement agency that was hired by most coal plants and iron mills around Pittsburgh to terrorize their employees or people that would go on strike. In fact, that particular thing that he did to try to banish this kind of bad private police force that a lot of these companies were getting was turned into a movie called Black Fury.
Wait.
1934.
I have to interrupt you about this because you're telling me that there was a side group of henchmen.
Oh yeah, most companies had a private police force.
For what though? What were they? What were they trying to mess with people about?
If you were to say something against the company or walk out or try to cause a strike or try
Jesus.
to talk, they meant business. I mean, it was as bad as you think it is. That's why this guy did an expose on it,
My goodness.
And there is newsreel footage of people being beaten to death with, clubs and on horseback of these kind of fake police, and it caused riots, caused major fights. And
what year is this?
Oh, from the beginning of Mills up until 1935.
Jesus. That's insane to me.
Yeah. So now they're ready for this. This is all by the time, this is before he was 30 years old. He did all this stuff. Okay. When he was 31 years old, he became the youngest judge in Pittsburgh history in Allegheny County. And he was nominated by both the Democrats and Republicans to the ticket.
Wow.
And endorsed by every labor organization. He would go and fight in World War I. Come back and still do his attorney thing here and lawyer and being a judge. Would later go on to fight in World War II, this time as an older man. And he wasn't responsible for, fighting or anything like that, but he became the chief prosecutor at the Nuremberg trials, okay, which is where they persecuted all the, Nazis who were left.
Yeah.
And put them on trial for death and war crimes. He was the person who cross-examined them and sentenced them all to death.
Holy shit.
He also got to investigate he was the first group of Americans to be allowed to go inside Hitler's bunker in Berlin. And all the stuff was recovered. It is currently sitting in Duquesne University archives.
What?
Yeah.
Do people know that?
Maybe not. In fact, it's under the Mossmano archives. They're at the Grunberg Library.
You can just go read that stuff?
If you go and talk to the archivist, I'm sure he'll show you. I've seen it. A signed bedroom portrait of Eva Braun that was on the bedpost overnight. Hitler's pillowcases.
No way.
Clothes. I mean, everything that was left. Everything that was there. It's all at Duquesne. Mossmano would later go on to interrogate everybody who was at that bunker, including his personal secretaries, all the right-hand men who didn't, also die. And he concluded, without any kind of discrepancy, that Hitler did kill himself and that the body was burned, because he talked to the guy who did it. Anyways, in those footage, which you can hear the audio and watch the video of, these people who I'm talking were living in that bunker with Hitler for like 6 months prior to talking to Michael Mossmano. Those interviews are like the craziest, most interesting thing you'll ever see. You can find they've never released the full videos. Duquesne has them, but they've released some clips which they've put together, which you can find on YouTube. But it's just
oh my god,
it's nuts. Anyways,
that's crazy.
Yeah, so he would later serve on the state Supreme Court, right, from 1951 to 1968, where he even set a record for the most number of dissenting opinions ever filed. His flamboyant behavior regularly drew the attention of Pittsburgh reporters. They all called his things that he would do in court musmanics, right? There was also a case. Oh, and I remember one case I was reading about in the newspaper. Somebody was killed by a drunk driver. Drunk driving was always happening even back then.
Yeah.
So what he did is he took all the people who were in Allegheny County Jail who were in prison for drunk driving and made them all come to the morgue to attend the funerals and the autopsies of anybody who victim that would be hit and run victims.
Wow.
And force them all to be the attendants of their funerals and things like that.
Try to scare them straight.
Yeah, scare them straight. He would do that type of stuff. So he did all types of crazy stuff. But on December 22nd, 1936, he declared in Allegheny County for Santa Claus to be a legal living entity. And I'm going to read to you his actual decision that was passed down from his desk, making Santa Claus real, legally, at least in Allegheny County. I don't know about other places in the world, but in Allegheny County, at least in 1936, this is still on the books. And here it goes. Now, there's a lot more to the beginning of this. I do have the whole thing, which is fascinating to read because he goes into detail about why he came up with this opinion. But this is his concluding opinion. Thus, after considering all the evidence in this case, which is made up of the testimony of the seasons, the attestations of the human heart, and the exhibits presented by Mother Nature, and after listening to the rosy-cheeked laughter of the December wind laden in the glittering snow, each flake a pattern of beauty and harmony, we conclude and find that Santa Claus is a reality. We further find that without him, life would be dull and cheerless, and that with him the heart is merry and the spirit is gay as life should be. There are many famous and celebrated characters who are as real to us in the flesh and blood, people of our daily contacts, and yet have not come within the range of our physical vision. Thus, after considering all the evidence in this case, I view in the foregoing, we hereby order, adjudge and decree that anybody within our jurisdiction who questions the authenticity or the genuineness of Santa Claus will be declared in contempt of court, and he should be committed to the Bastille, there to be kept in the dungeon vile until his soul expands with the entire spirit of Christmas, enters therein, where he shall then be released, provided that he shall shout with his whole lungs and full heart, Merry Christmas to all. Merry Christmas to all.
No way.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, you can keep it here. Yeah, isn't that nuts?
My goodness. Wow.
That legitimately happened. So at least according to the legal books of Allegheny County, Santa Claus is a legal, real life thing.
Wow. That's crazy.
So I found that out the first year I started doing on Pittsburgh, and I was like, what? I was like, how can I go my whole life and being such a big fan of Christmas in general? How could I not know that like this event even occurred, let alone here? And so that's what's incredible about all these stories is that like, they're credible on their own, let alone the fact that they happened in Pittsburgh. And the fact that like, if I just talk about him, or because I have the article when it appeared in the Post-Gazette and stuff, because they made a big deal about it, that Santa Claus was real, and if I post that even today, half of all of social media will have no idea that this event occurred.
Never.
Ever. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah. So
every time you come in here, I'm just like, I have no idea what you could even be coming up with. And
yeah.
That's wild to hear. Even the stuff you read before there being, officially a Santa Claus here is just wild. But man, that's crazy.
Is that nuts?
Judge Michael Massimano.
Yeah. Yeah. He's an interesting guy. You could do a whole show just on him. No joke. I mean, he had so many stories, so many interesting.
And he did that all before he was 31?
Yeah. He would later go on. He became like the biggest advocate on earth for protecting the notion that Christopher Columbus discovered America first and not anybody else, never ever before that exact date of 1492. He took this thing to his grave. I'm talking, he would later go on to like fight legally to try and make Columbus Day a national holiday, which he did succeed in doing.
Wow.
He would go on to preach to schools and things and tell you to eliminate all your other education, learn about this great Italian American, this Italian guy, because that's what it was all about, Italian heritage. And Christopher Columbus is still an Italian hero, per se. And it's, you're not a wimp for sailing across the ocean blue, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I can give him some little bit of respect. So but anyways, I'm Italian, but yeah, he would take that to his grave, and he actually died on Columbus Day, later in life.
No way.
Yeah, he wrote books on it. And this was like, he spent the remainder of his life promoting
Jesus.
that. In other Italian, American things, but it's an interesting guy, nonetheless. Just look at his Wikipedia. We'll tell you everything you need to know. It's insane.
Everyone that's I don't know if a single person that's listening right now will know any of this.
Yeah.
Is this not that much of common knowledge?
That's the thing. You'd think it would be common knowledge. You could clearly see that this guy's got a major history here in Allegheny County. He was well known to people up until the 60s, but then like I've talked about before, like what happens when you die?
Yeah.
Some people, you die and you're gone. You're dead and gone. You're never talked about again. You're never mentioned again. It was as if you never were here in the first place. Unless you make a big enough impact. You did something to do something that someone someday could stumble upon and talk about you one more time. And so that's what it comes down to with people like him and stories like that. These kind of hidden figures.
Now, let me ask you this.
There, yeah.
Now, we read these articles that you have, and this is proof, okay? These are documented things. But what do you think that modern technology is going to do to proof, in air quotes? You know what I mean? Because everyone has an opinion now. Mm-hmm. Everyone could post it online. These things that you read are, newspaper articles, things like that. Mm-hmm. But what do you think it is going to be, in 50, 60 years, whenever people are reading,
I've thought about that. Yeah, I've thought about that. So I've been working, and I've already reached out to a lot of different companies, and the technology does not exist at the moment. But here's my theoretical idea. Okay, I've taken the time to go on newspapers.com or any of these sites, and I got this idea about when I was researching the history of hockey and how I was able to prove beyond a doubt that Pittsburgh were the first people to ever pay their people to play hockey, making them professionals. It's changed recorded history. If you just type in, tell me about the history of professional hockey, you'll see that there's something talking about 1904,
Hot Michigan,
and all that crap.
Bullshit.
Yeah, and I found out that not only was it 1901, but 1902. They published the salaries in the newspaper. It was not like a hidden thing. It was like, this guy's getting paid $30 to play this game. It's like, that's professional. Anyways, so when you have that information, and what I realized is the only way I was able to find that information was to go to I knew the time frame where this event occurred, which was after 1900, but before 1904, right? So I knew that I had to read at least 4 years of newspapers, and I did exactly that. I just typed in the word hockey, sorted it by date, and read every single article ever written from the year 1899 to 1904 that mentions the word hockey in all states and all countries that exist. And what you start to find now, thankfully, hockey wasn't huge.
Yeah.
So, there wasn't that many things you have to go through, but, a few thousand articles to really find the answer that you're looking for. A lot of times it's just ads for hockey equipment or something, it's just like happens the word hockey in it.
Yeah.
So you have to like filter through all this crap in order to get that gold. So my idea when I was thinking about this and how much time it took me to like compile all this, forgotten about information, which was already there. It just needs someone to find it. I was like, well, why can't I just get an AI to find it and write it for me?
Wow.
What if I can't just type in, tell me about the history of hockey and, pull it from that source, and then it could search for me. It could compile it all and put in some kind of cohesive story. Now imagine if you could do that with everything in the world, with everything.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's my idea. So like I've looked into it recently and to see if the AI has caught up, and it hasn't. It still needs someone to manually curate the information. And the AI told me that themselves.
I've been seeing all this random shit. Like I saw this Twitter thread the other day that was like
GPT told me the exact same thing too as well when I asked him. Now what's funny is I asked Chat GPT, which is on that, the thing that's been going on Twitter.
What is that?
It's an AI written chatbot that essentially you could ask it. It's like an oracle. You could ask it anything you want and it will tell you, like based on intelligent answers that it self formulated. Based upon information that was feeded, it was feeded resources, but it's not reading it from the resource. It's interpreting the resource and telling you, rewriting it and telling you in some sort of way. So I asked it, tell me about the history of professional hockey. And it said, professional hockey was, created in 1904 in Michigan, hot Michigan, and, it involved these teams and stuff. And I went, that's not true. It didn't happen in hot Michigan. It happened in Pittsburgh. They said, you are indeed correct. It says it happened in Pittsburgh beginning in 1901 and 1902 with the Western Pennsylvania Hockey League. Some of the teams mentioned were the Pittsburgh Bankers. I said, tell me more about the Western Pennsylvania Hockey League. And it starts telling me more about that and talks about the managers and the people who were hiring the players and how they got them here to Pittsburgh to start paying them. But I was like, and then eventually it got so deep the word just didn't know anything other than the same information it was putting out. And it was just like it didn't have anything new. But then I asked it, I was like, is there a way to compile all of this information in a cohesive way, to where it could be rewritten in an intelligent manner based upon a wide variety of sources, to get to the bottom of the answer type of thing. And it flat out told me it's like that the AI technology has not caught up. There would be a way to do a query search and to pull the information from the site, but it wouldn't be able to interpret it as well as a human, because it's not going to be able to distinguish an ad for hockey skates from some other hockey player's name or something without it having a meltdown. So it still takes a human to do it, but we're almost there.
We're getting there.
Now, so back to what you were saying, why nobody knows about that type of stuff. It's because it's that difficult to find this information out. Like to find out anything about this event that happened in the 30s.
So you found this just by scouring through newspapers.
Yeah. And then I ended up having to contact the Duquesne, and because I knew already that the Masmato's family donated stuff to Duquesne back in the 60s or something after he died. And I was just curious to see what they had. And the guy's like, oh, we got lots of stuff. And he's like, I was like, oh, you don't say, and like, so then he took me back and showed me like the actual stuff, from the bunker and all that type of thing. And then I didn't even know the Christmas story. I just knew about that connection. I didn't even know the Christmas story until I started digging further into it. So yeah, it's just like these kind of lost tales.
Factoids that are just in a box somewhere.
Yeah.
You're the
if
one
there's
that's
a way for
out.
the AI or someone to pull it out and present it, that is my goal in the future, to create, literally the Library of Alexandria, a thing that would have every answer to every question, at least known, so there's always going to be unknowns. That's the problem, is that, even with these stories, there was probably some guy who was paid to play hockey first. That just wasn't written down. It doesn't mean it didn't happen, but where's that story? So it doesn't answer all the questions, but it will give you the closest thing to an actual answer.
Wow.
On Earth. And even though, and pulled it from newspapers is not even a great source because it's, it's opinionated.
Yeah.
So like, how else can you get that information? You can use this same technology to scour every college, university, library, every museum, archive, everything. Everything that's ever been scanned anywhere.
My goodness.
So yeah. I thought of that a couple of years ago, and I told one guy. I actually tried to talk to the guy who created Duolingo, and we were talking about doing things like that together and stuff. But there's a lot of.
Well, how does the AI tell if it's a credible source?
Well, that's the thing. It would automatically generate a source, a citation list, at the end, so that if you did have a question for anything, you go back and check the source yourself. So it's still going to have to be human involvement in the checking of the information.
But you're going to
find out a new answer to everything. Everything. I don't even need to finish the sentence. You'll just find a new answer to everything.
Oh my God.
Because it is the case. Like, there's diaries that are still, like, even just from Pittsburgh history, there was so much stuff that happened in the 1750s era, like from 1750 to 1760 alone. So many speeches were given. So all this stuff is written down too, by the way. You just have to, like, no one's going to read through hundreds and hundreds of pages and things like that. You need something like what I did is, I took some of these things and I condensed them down to a Twitter post, one picture, one story, here you go, right?
Snackable content.
Can you do that, with, the world history of everything? I think you can, now you just have to figure out a way to do it the right way, and even then it's still only going to be up until a point, because there's always going to be something that might exist, some other thing. Like, for example, I found some of my hockey stuff in a hand put together scrapbook that someone donated to the History Center. That was nothing in it was older, like newer than 1905. It was all stuff from like 1905 and prior, specific to hockey and winter sports. So it was just like every newspaper article was just cut out and stuck in there, pictures, things that no one's ever seen. So, like, newspapers that don't exist anymore, that they're not even scanned or online, that's another problem. There's a lot of stuff that's just never been scanned.
Yeah, that was my next question is, like,
you would have to devote all your time and energy, nonprofits. You would have to basically just pay everybody who works at the Carnegie Library just to start scanning all day long, everything they have. It's that simple.
And that complicated.
And it would be a massive undertaking, but it'd be worth it.
Yeah, in the end, it would be worth it.
They have hundreds of thousands of photos of Pittsburgh history that nobody's ever seen. You would only see it if you go there and ask specifically, like, you knew exactly who took the photograph,
what you're looking for.
There's no way to find this information out, and it's like a crime, against the betterment of the advancement of history. We're only up to a point in Pittsburgh history where it was like we only know so much. There's only going to be so much that's out there that's scanned.
Yeah.
The rest of everything is still in boxes in people's closets and in random basements of institutions. And it really takes a lot of money and a lot of skilled people to handle all that material and to somehow scan it and to put it through, all that stuff. I mean, it's a massive undertaking. It's something that needs to be done within the next 100 years for sure, 50 years. Because books eventually just fall apart in your hands.
Yeah.
And, if there's a fire, at the Carnegie Library, what do you think's going to happen to all that stuff they got? And they got stuff that, like, irreplaceable. I mean, incredible documents and things that they don't let anybody see. And so it's like, what do you do with that stuff?
Wow.
I'm sure they take some measures, but not.
That's heavy, though.
It explodes.
Heavy to think about.
Yeah.
If a fire happens,
start scanning stuff now.
Yeah. If a fire happens, it's done.
It's done. Yeah. It's done. So, like, and it, luckily that's never happened at a Carnegie Library.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, exactly.
That's terrible. That's scary to think about.
Yeah. Imagine if all your knowledge went up in flames, So, like, that's important. And that exactly what happened to the Library of Alexandria.
Yeah.
It went up in flames. We lost that, mythical library. Now, what if someone scanned it all and put it online and was able to translate it somehow, like interpret it and could feed it out to people in like cohesive manners? You change the world. It's like it's just a matter of figuring out how to do it.
That's what everyone should ask for Christmas. Everyone should ask to. We should all devote some time to go scan some shit down there.
Yeah. Scan.
It's kind of scary. It gives me anxiety to think about that.
Scan your old photographs. Know where your photographs are, and you go to old ones and things like that.
Do you scan everything that you have?
I haven't scanned all of my family photographs, but I've scanned a lot of them. But I've organized them all by age and by event. I'm talking. It was the first thing I did when COVID hit. Like I bought one. I went on Amazon and found like this massive organizing thing with these like little containers in there with photos.
Yeah.
And I took every single like Kodak envelope, random Fujifilm thing or whatever, like dumped them everything out on the floor, everything I've ever had my entire life from from mom onwards, just everything on the floor. And I just sorted it. I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take any photo that doesn't have me in it, and I'll just put those ones over here. Ones that have me in it, I'll separate by event and by age in sequential order. So I have literally an entire thing of like just Thanksgiving, just Halloween throughout my entire life, just Christmas,
Wow.
It's pretty neat. But so what happens to that stuff? All my old photographs have been scanned, but random Chuck E. Cheese birthday parties, they're not scanned, but they'll be gone someday. So how do you protect that type of stuff? The only way is to scan it. And even then, don't just upload it to one site, upload it to a bunch of sites, because, one day Google Drive is going to be gone. One day there's not going to be whatever. So like you need to protect that type of stuff for future generations. I mean,
Jesus.
Every time I go to an antique store and I see like a bunch of old photographs, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, how could this even happen? Like, how could like some of these people like saved up for so long? And it was like the only single photograph ever taken of their entire life. So now it's in some like upside down in some bin, in some random antique store, like lost forever, lost to time. Like how sad. So it's like, if there's way that couldn't, if you were to take those steps, like I mentioned, scan those things when they're at their source before it disappeared, then go ahead and sell it or whatever, or give it away or something like that. But at least there's some sort of record of it somewhere. Because I can't tell you how invaluable like old family photos are, especially like family when you're into family trees and doing genealogy. It's like a gold, like finding some random, even distant cousin just to see if you kind of looked like them or something.
Yeah.
I had somebody who was randomly saw a Facebook post on my personal page about my great grandmother and said like, "Oh, she related to this person, that name or whatever?" I was like, "Yeah." I looked in the family tree and it turns out it was like her great aunt or something. And then like they never left Italy. They like came, like the rest of the family did, but this person stayed behind. They had a whole other family. Like I'm finding out all this stuff now. She had photographs of when like my great grandfather was a little boy, and I'm like, like where's this stuff? Now, if that was just scanned and put online years ago, this would have been such a relief. Now it's still not scanned. It's still, she just took a photo. She's like an older lady, so she just took a photo of this most important photograph I've ever seen, like from a distance. And I'm like, oh, at least take it out. At least go close to it, and take a photo.
Wow.
But and when I wrote a book on local history, like Ross Township history, way back when, and that was the case even then. That there was like 50 photographs total for the whole township. And the only way I was able to find more was begging old ladies to like go in their attics, look in shoe boxes and find like old stuff like that. And even that, they were very picky in what you can and couldn't scan. They'd be like, you can scan these 3 photos. I'm like, but you have 500 photos. Like these 3, you could scan these ones. I'm like, but this is the only known photo you've, ever of Big Night Road or whatever. Like, yeah, but these ones are my favorites,
Wow.
That's all it was. And then like, I remember one person, they were so old, they lived in their parents' house. And they were old to begin with, and their parents must have been born in the 1800s.
Yeah.
And I brought my scanner with me to these people's houses because they were never going to let these photos out of their sight. And this guy didn't even have polarized plugs in the entire house. I had to run an extension cord outside to like plug in my printer because it had 3 prongs,
What?
He didn't have, yes, that's how old this guy, the kitchen looked like something out of like 1940s kitchen. It looked like the Christmas Story kitchen, but for real.
Wow.
Yeah. He lived in McKees Rocks, like right at the very last house at the end of the train tracks,
My goodness.
Yeah, this is still so many weird stories about when you write a book like that, with what it takes to find one photograph. But like, so hopefully that can evolve. I have 5,000 something photographs for just Ross Township now since creating it, like putting it on social media. That's where everything got started anyways. It was like local, hyper local history. People from like Hawaii or South Carolina or whatever, anybody who's got photos can now share them for the first time ever outside of their shoeboxes.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that social media has done so much good with, is the fact that it's so shareable when it comes to history, that people from all over the world can share their personal memories of growing up in Pittsburgh or any city.
Yeah.
And photographs.
And people could relate to some things like that they might not ever.
And one of the main reasons my page is popular between like every kind of group there is because it's like everybody can relate to it.
Yeah.
It's not polarizing in any kind of way.
100%.
Like who's going to argue about, Chi-Chi's or something, or like some really random historic, restaurant, or, people will always argue about everything, but You post one photo of Andrew Carnegie, doesn't matter how mean or happy he looks, it just, that creates controversy. Every single time I visited Andrew Carnegie this summer. I got to see his grave and stuff, and it was weird to be around.
Where's it at?
Sleepy Hollow Cemetery.
Really?
Yeah. And in Sleepy Hollow, Tarrytown, New York. And I have family members buried in the same cemetery. My 7th great grandfather was buried in Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. But so was my 8th and 9th. But Andrew Carnegie's buried there as well. And he's just tucked in this weird little secluded area, this kind of Celtic cross, real cool looking, and his wife's there and stuff. And it's like, you're just alone, standing next to Andrew Carnegie for a brief moment, you get to be the closest you possibly could, because he's really there. He's there under the ground, and you get to have a small little, minute with him.
It's crazy to think about that.
Yeah, it's neat to think about, so all those kind of cool little connections there, Sleepy Hollow is a great place. I mean, that's I never thought I would be a fan of another city outside of Pittsburgh. But it's all because of my family tree. I realized that I didn't know this prior to this last Halloween. I never really dug into it too deep, that part of my family. But it turns out for 250 something years, my family lived in Sleepy Hollow. They were there from the very beginning, from the day it was founded, way through Washington Irving, coming there and writing all the tales of Rip Van Winkle and the Headless Horseman. Those stories and legends, the town people, were about my family.
Wow.
And so when I went through there, and I'm like,
lights of fire inside.
It was incredible. It was incredible just to think that I was like, holy crap. It's the church is there, the Sleepy, the Headless Horseman Bridge. I mean, it's all real, So it's
crazy to think about.
It was cool experience to do that and experience that and stuff. But that's getting off subject.
That's all right.
But it's good. Yeah. The point just being is that there's so much left unknown that we'll never be able to tell the history of anything correctly.
That's wild to think about.
It is. I mean, there'll be maybe a few things, I mean, maybe modern day stuff, as long as people keep really good records, a really good track of how things begin and how they end up.
Were you ever someone that kept a diary?
Never. I have one diary. It's the book of the recently deceased, it's like a diary I got in LA, and I only write in it if I find the book. That's the rule. I just put it away somewhere, and only randomly, if I'm cleaning or reorganizing my books, every 3 years, I'll find the book. And if I find it, I make it a rule that I have to write in it. And if you look through it, it's just 2-year gaps, 3-year gaps here and there, different girlfriends, different life, just everything. It's cool to read through it, but
go back.
I was never a person who did that. I try to keep myself. I'm a very, even when my wife goes to work or my kids are in school and stuff, I'm like a monk, I could go if I didn't have the family around, I could go a week without opening my mouth.
Yeah. And just reading and
just
consuming.
not talking. Yeah. Just I'll go most of my day, I spend not talking a single word, as weird as it sounds, because I talk a lot.
Yeah.
But during most of my day, I spend most of my time never
consuming,
talking at all. I don't like to talk on the phone. I do. I like to have a good conversation. That's the thing.
Yeah.
But I won't seek it out.
Yeah. I get what you're saying.
So
you want it to be organic.
I like to be left alone. I like the solitude, and I work better that way.
Were you someone who wrote Christmas letters to Santa?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Now, was your mother did she entertain that and ever write back?
No. I don't think I've ever received a letter back from Santa.
Where do you think they went? Did you put them in the mailbox? Do you remember? I remember I wrote a Christmas letter one time, and I put it in the mailbox in Olympia Shopping Center in front of the Eckerd.
Yeah. I think we would go drive to the post office if we put it in the post office thing. Or I think, no, she would say she was going to drive it to the post office, and then maybe give it to my dad later that night or something. I don't know. But I never saw where it went. I never got anything in response. It was real weird because it's totally different for my kids and the tradition that I do with them. They have we do celebrate St. Nick's Day.
What's that?
On December 6th in Eastern European culture and traditions, St. Nicholas visits. And that was the earliest, European Christmas is on December 6th. It's not on the 25th. And it's more based upon the winter solstice and the changing of the seasons. And
you implemented that tradition?
Her family did that since her grandparents and great grandparents were little kids.
So what do? You
put your shoes out the night before, December 5th. You put your shoes out either by your front door or by a fireplace. And Saint Nick, if you've been good, will come by and fill your shoes with either candy or gold or, gold coins or something, or little gifts, little Lego sets or, whatever.
I've never even heard of that. Saint Nick's Day.
And I didn't really hear about it either until like I started dating her, and then and then she made it like a just tradition. But of course, the best thing about Saint Nicholas is the day before. December 5th is the day that they celebrate the Santa's helper, or Saint Nicholas, specifically Saint Nicholas, not Santa, but Saint Nicholas's helper, whose name is Krampus.
What?
And the night before Saint Nicholas Day is Krampus Nacht.
No way.
Which is the night of the demon, the night of the Krampus. Now, the Krampus would, he wouldn't intentionally seek you out. If you were a good boy, you'd be fine. He traveled with Santa Claus, and he had switches, like a whip.
And you'd be impish or admirable.
He looked like a goat man type of thing. And if you were really bad, he'd eat you, or he'd throw you in a sack and take you away to the underworld. And and Saint Nicholas would be right next to him and would give you either the gifts or the bad things. And this tradition continues to this day in Germany and other countries all across the world, where Krampus fests appear. And I was at one just a couple nights ago.
I know. I was trying to line up to talk to that guy.
It's pretty awesome. And it's straight out of like the traditional, like Slavic traditional.
Yeah,
like,
you're talking
Krampus.
about down in Market Square.
Like these people, like they're like
live and breathe it.
There's no
I'm probably going to get him back
because they love it.
Yeah. I know. He hit me up and he was like, "Yo, dude, I saw that you wanted to talk to someone that's involved with it. I've been here since the beginning."
Yeah, they could have been nicer, to tell you the truth, man. I mean, I took my 12-year-old because he's gotten to this Krampus legend, and he's written letters to Krampus every year for the last 2 years. Yeah,
wow.
Krampus does write back to him. So I'll show you a letter.
I'm curious.
Afterwards.
So like, this is what I'm curious about because, full circle after this 40-minute tangent about
this one even came on a scroll this year, all the burnt and blood. I made it real good. It was real nice. Yeah.
Now, for you to implement these traditions, obviously we're talking about Saint Nick's Day. Mm-hmm. That's cool. You guys do that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what other traditions do you implement as an adult wanting to do?
Oh, for sure. Well, we, getting the Christmas tree is a big deal, the real thing, decorating the Christmas tree. And we listen to Christmas music basically 24/7 in my house. We got radios in all the different rooms and it's on all day long from Thanksgiving onward. We used to do, as the kids get older, we change traditions. It's weird as you get older, things change.
Yeah.
You start to realize that the family that you grew up with, your family are still there, you're still your mom, or still like whatever, brothers or whatever. But now you have your own family.
Yeah. So you can create your own
world. A little different. Yeah. You can create your own traditions, your own things, that you can celebrate and not celebrate. And, we're a very open household and, we don't believe in anything, we don't force, I'm not saying I don't believe in anything. I don't force any beliefs on anybody.
Yeah.
But I encourage them to investigate it all. So I legitimately, I think it was 2 years ago, I told him, I was like, you know what? This year we're going to celebrate every holiday. Every single one of them in the book. Let's get a calendar. I don't care what it is. Some Iranian holiday for celebrating whatever spring. We're going to celebrate it. We're going to learn what they eat. We're going to, maybe we'll learn a word, and we'll just celebrate every tradition from every culture across the globe and see which one sticks. I grew up with Christmas, but there's lots of other. Let's maybe celebrate Celtic Christmas this year, or let's look into whatever. And so you kind of start new traditions and new interesting things, ways you can enjoy the holiday that aren't so traditional.
Yeah.
Or your tradition. You can make your own traditions. And that's become a real fun experience. And every year it changes. It's an ever evolving thing. And as we get older, it's becoming better. That's the best part. It's like it just becomes better.
Yeah.
And it really does it makes you closer as a family unit, because now you have this unique thing that I don't think anyone does that.
That's a good point.
And kind of interesting things like that. And even when they go to the school, they'd be like, it's not like Festivus, but it's like Festivus and more. Yeah.
Wow.
So it's kind of neat. They give them the freedom to kind of explore and make a new tradition if they want to.
Yeah.
We do have an elf on the shelf now named Toby, if he's listening. Who travels around the house every day. You can't touch them. If you touch them, that Christmas magic is bad.
Is that the rule? You don't touch them?
That's the rule. Yeah. He moves around unusual places, always watching and always listening, reports back to Santa every night type of thing. Christmas Eve, he disappears. He's gone. That's the last time you see him, because he's back in the North Pole or whatever. So we keep that tradition going. And that's new tradition. I mean, that Elf on the Shelf just came out, like 10 years ago. Like he's brand new, And then, I try to get him to watch all of my Christmas specials, that I grew up on, but they don't, I did get my 5-year-old to watch the Garfield Christmas special, like the Garfield cartoon from the 80s. And then, and to watch some of that, interesting stuff. I might show my 13-year-old Die Hard this year.
Oh yeah.
He's old enough. Like I've shown him Terminator 2 already. So like he can handle extreme action. But like,
Die Hard, first time I ever watched it was last year.
Really?
Yeah, because I did, I try to do the Christmas movies and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I threw an event last year where, we went to a restaurant. My buddy has a restaurant over in Jefferson Hills. And I was like, I want to create this event where you come and you get, we're going to play Home Alone. We're all going to sit there and eat together and eat your own plain cheese pizza there. And, people were saying, I was trying to poll with all the Instagram followers, like, what's a good Christmas movie? And all these people were saying, Die Hard, Die Hard, Die Hard.
Right.
And it's like, I have nothing against it. I loved it. I love Striking Distance. I love Bruce Willis.
Right.
But it was one of the movies I just never watched. And then I watched it and I was like, wow, cannot believe that I went this long without watching it. I don't consider it a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
But I understand why people do.
Oh, yeah. Takes place at Christmas time.
I put a poll up, and I think like 94 people voted, and it was like 69% said it was a Christmas movie.
Yeah,
and I was like, all right, that's fine. I'll give you that. That's fine.
Yeah.
It takes place at Christmas time, but that's interesting. So as far as traditions, expanding onto that, I have traditions where like, my traditions are Christmas movies. Every Christmas Eve, I watch Tim Allen, the Santa Claus. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I watch it after everyone goes to bed, and I'll probably fall asleep halfway through. Seen it a million times. That's a tradition for me. Do you have traditions in that way? Like, what are some of your favorite Christmas movies?
Oh, I got so many. I love Christmas movies, number one. I've seen a lot of them. My grandmother, who I talked about on my mom's side, was obsessed with like Turner Classic Movies and all that type of stuff growing up as a kid. So she kind of brought me on to these movies like The Lemon Drop Kid.
I've never even heard of that.
Or Holiday Hotel, or Winter Wonderland, or all these movies where the songs that we hear on the radio today, they all came from these movies that came out like in the 50s and 40s, 50s and 60s, really. And to kind of like go explore. I always was fascinated, like, what is the, number one, before I get too deep into theoretical Christmas holiday things, my favorite Christmas movies, 100% Christmas Vacation, only because I grew up watching it.
Yeah.
I saw it in the theater.
That's another one that I was late to. I didn't watch that until like probably 3 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
That was the first time.
Every year. And I watch that all year round. I don't watch it. Home Alone, that was probably my favorite all-time go-to Christmas movie, because it does. I mean, I was the same age. Like
1990.
Even in the movie, he says like, I'm only 8 years old. I was 8 years old when I saw that movie.
Oh wow!
Like in the theater, and I remember like, and then the sequel, he was 10 or something, and I was 10 at the same time. So it was like, it spoke to me, that movie. You weren't old enough, I guess, to see part. Well, I mean, you would have been really little, I guess.
I was born in 99, or I was born in 90. So like that movie came out, I was 6 months old.
Yeah.
I never seen it in a movie theater, but.
Did you see part 2? The theater, that part 2 came out in 94. So you were still been 4 years old. I can remember seeing that movie in the theater. Part 2, at least. I don't remember part 1, seeing part 1 in the theater, but I remember seeing part 2. Not only was it like standing room only in the theater, but I'm telling you, when like, Harry throws the bricks at the end of stuff, I've never heard people like hysterical on the floor laughing, like you couldn't even hear the film when you saw it. I've only been in a movie theater one other time where that's happened. That was when I was at like the premiere of Meet the Fockers. Oh, and like the scene where it's like, I got nipples. Can you build? I mean, it was like, unbelievable. I've never heard people laugh that hard in the theater. But other than Home Alone 2, when I saw it, I remember my dad too. My dad was just like, he laughed so hard and he would just laugh so much at everything. So part of that, I guess, had to do with him laughing.
I saw a post
even to this, later in life, you'd see Home Alone on TV.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know what would be on. I would just hear all of a sudden like an hysterical laughter coming from downstairs. And it's always the scene with, Harry or Marv and whatever, in the tarantula.
Oh yeah.
And him screaming. That thing would just trigger my dad, to the point where like hysterical laughter. So like that always brings up that memory, for example.
Yeah.
So like, it's not so much the movie itself, it's the memories that come along with the movies.
100%.
Yeah. And then, but I love all Christmas movies. I mean, I try to seek out weird ones. I mean, I love all the weird ones, even Silent Night, Deadly Night, and Black Christmas, and Black Christmas is great if you haven't seen it.
I haven't watched that yet. So
like the same guy who did Christmas Story.
Well, I found this out recently because I'm doing another event at the Parkway Theater where I'm doing Home Alone and Gremlins. I never got to see either of them in the movie theater. So I was like, I'm going to throw something together and we're going to do double feature. But Black Christmas was one that I was going to, I took a poll of what people wanted to see. And I feel like a lot of people just haven't seen that.
Yeah. A lot of people haven't. Yeah. It's like one of those slasher films that you find like a Blockbuster back in the day,
That's what I'm going to watch for sure. But it was, the decision was, my pillars are Home Alone 2, and, the Santa Claus.
Yeah.
If I had to pick, if I had to pick like Desert Island Christmas movies, like those are at 100%.
I know I have to add to that list. As weird as it might sound, Ernest Saves Christmas. Now I'm from a different generation from you, a tiny bit.
I love
only
Ernest.
a little bit, but Ernest, man.
Ernest Scared Stupid is one of the best of all time.
Yeah. I show my kids Ernest Scared Stupid every Halloween. Yeah,
Miak,
my favorite.
come on now.
Oh yeah, you buckle up, booger lips.
Yeah, that's the best.
Yeah, so but Ernest Saves Christmas is always really good. I always like the Dudley Moore Christmas. There was a Santa Claus movie called The Santa Claus that stars Dudley Moore as an elf.
Yeah,
that takes place in the 1980s, like in New York and stuff.
I haven't watched a lot of these.
John Lithgow's in it. There was another. It's a great story. There's a great movie called One Magical Christmas One Magical Christmas stars Mary Steenburgen, where she loses her husband like around Christmas time, and there's this guardian angel that comes. It's a really great movie. I think it's named this. I think that's what it's called. That's a great movie. But if you just type in Mary Steenburgen and look at her filmography, you'll find it in there. It's like It Happened One Christmas or something. It's
what about your wife?
Amazing movie. She loves the Santa Claus. Well, Christmas, I guess the same. Home Alone, all the different awesome Christmas movies. I mean, like, there's not one that we don't like other than Elf. I don't like Elf.
Really?
Never liked it.
I
just have a thing for Will Ferrell. Like, I just don't like Will Ferrell as much as other people. And really, because I knew some kid in high school, in college, at film school, who was the spitting image and identical to Will Ferrell. And he even I had to take acting improv classes as part of my school, and I had to go up against them, and it was like going up against Will Ferrell, and I just hated Will Ferrell. And so it was like I hated this dude too. And it all stems from that. So it's the only reason. But I can appreciate it. I do like the music.
What about your kids?
They like Home Alone. That's probably their go-to Christmas movie.
I heard
they love all the animated ones. All the different because they make so many things for kids now. Even Frozen could be considered like a holiday movie.
Keep it.
But there's and all the Santa Claus sequels, of course, they like.
I saw a meme the other day that talked about Kevin McAllister was fully aware of what was happening, and at any point in time he could have called the police.
Right.
And he didn't, but it's like, he was scared, but he was maniacal.
Yeah.
And after I read this, I started to really think about this, and I'm like, this kid is a fucking lunatic. An actual lunatic.
Oh yeah.
And there's a good one called Better Watch Out.
Yeah.
It's a horror movie. It's basically like Home Alone, but it's horror. Have you seen that?
No.
Worth watching.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
I'll have to check it out.
As far as Christmas.
I wrote a Christmas movie.
What do you mean? You wrote it?
Yeah.
It's not made though?
No, we never made it. I do have the script.
You need a Santa?
Well, it's called Christmas Nightmare.
It's
and
a horror movie?
and I did it in the style of Twilight Zone or like Tales from the Crypt or
Love it.
One of those kind of movie that has like 4 stories like Tales from the Dark Side, where it's like, here's an intro story, here's 3 main stories and like a, type of thing. And the first one is great. And my kids have actually read it by accident because they found it sitting on my shelf one day. It's called Christmas Nightmare, so how are you not going to open up a book that says Christmas Nightmare?
How long is it?
It's it would be like an hour and a half movie, 2-hour movie. You have to cut it down. But
when did you do this?
Early 2000s.
Okay.
And the first story is about this Christmas goblin, right? That I created, where it was a story about a little kid in bed one night, and He's getting ready to go to sleep because it's going to be Christmas the next day, you know. And, he's trying to fall asleep and he hears something moving around in his bed, underneath his bed, or doesn't. So he screams for his mom. His mom comes in and she's like, what's wrong? He's like, oh, there's a monster under my bed, or there's a monster in my closet. She's like, there's no such thing as goblins or monsters and things like that. She's like, you just go back to sleep, everything will be like, fine, Christmas is tomorrow. If you don't go to sleep now, Santa's not going to come, right? So he's like, you're right. So I have to try to go to sleep, so he's sleeping and he hears something again. This time he sees the door open a tiny bit, his closet, screams for his mom again. She comes and she's like, what's it now? Listen, you need to go to bed. Me and your dad need to, take care of some things, it's Christmas Eve, we need to get ready for tomorrow. He's like, Mom, I'm telling you, there's something in my closet, something, she opens up the closet, there's nothing in the closet, of course, and then she looks under the bed, there's nothing under the bed. And she goes, look, you can't just keep calling for me. You've heard the story, the boy cried wolf, eventually, something might happen where, I'm not going to come because I might not just know. So he's like, fine, I'll try to go to sleep. So he goes back to sleep. This time he's nervous. He puts the covers over his head. And he hears something, this closet door open. All of a sudden his mom leaves, he hears something coming near his bed. You can hear footsteps, he yells out for his mom. He hears his mom. His mom's like, what's the matter? What's the matter? She's like, the goblin is here. He's like, there's no such thing as goblins, come out of there. So he takes the covers off his head and sure enough,
it's a goblin.
It's the Christmas goblin there to eat him, and then boom, credits. That's the title credits of the movie, Christmas Nightmare. So and the stories go on from there. Like one was a tale of a guy who gets lost one day on his way going to his family's Christmas celebration, Christmas Eve, and ends up in a village where they're going to have this big Christmas feast, which ends up being him.
Oh wow!
Another one is a story about this mailman who. He's trapped in like a cycle, which turns out to be like a hell. So every day he wakes up and relives the same horrible experience he experienced as a mailman delivering Christmas presents. Oh. And he kills this woman, like this old woman, and he doesn't know why he's killing her. And he keeps waking up the next day and he's like, oh my God, I had this horrible dream and I killed this woman on my route. And I can't believe this happened. It seems so realistic. He goes back there the second day. This time he's more nervous because he had this dream about it. But sure enough, he kills the lady again. Something happens where something happens. He kills him. He wakes up again, right? He tells his wife, oh, you're not going to believe this. I had the same dream twice. I had this thing. Turns out like he's in this never ending loop of like repeating the same event. There's nothing you can do to stop.
We got to make these.
Yeah. And then there was another one where called The Eye of the Beholder, about this woman who's so vain and just obsessed with her beauty. And buys and sees this antique mirror that she wants to get someone for Christmas, and something she has to have, like one of those handheld beauty mirrors. She sees it at this antique shop, and the lady tells her like, you cannot. It's not for sale. It's like the never ending story. You can't buy this book. So the lady goes to the back room or whatever, and she steals this mirror. Of course it's a cursed mirror.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And so there's more to that story. But
Mogwai, not for sale.
Yeah. So, but that's part of the Christmas trilogy. I even wrote a theme song to it, music and stuff like that. But we never made it. But
you got to get those made. That sounds great.
That'd be fun. So there's always you can always tell a new story, whether good or bad, scary or happy Christmas tale. And that's the cool thing about movies is how you can reinterpret
100 different times.
Yeah, The Bishop's Wife is another great one you should watch from the 40s.
That's a horror movie?
Bing Crosby, no. Oh. Just thinking of a different random. The Bells of St. Mary is another one. There's a lot of really good. It's a Wonderful Life.
You watch Krampus?
Of course. Oh yeah, I'll watch Krampus.
Yeah, the new one is like an instant classic for me.
Yeah,
I put it off for so long. I was like, this is going to be terrible.
Yeah,
we watched it. It was like
this right on St. Nick's Day, the day after Krampus night. Of course, there was a mysterious package that arrived near my Christmas tree, which was an engraved Krampus bell.
No way.
For my 12-year-old.
Oh my God.
Anyways, I prepare
you sound like the best.
He was like, oh my God.
Are you like, they put out cookies and stuff?
Oh yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. I always try to tell them like, make sure you put some peanut butter cookies in there. Santa likes peanut butter, stuff like that.
Now 12, 13-year-olds, like the older ones, like, do they obviously know that it's you?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, not really.
Do they like, that's why I'm asking.
Well, it's because, it's approached in a way where it's never brought up. Number one.
Yeah.
Number two, well, it is somewhat because my 5-year-old asks about it all the time.
Yeah.
But then I explained to him the other day, about what Christmas means. Cause I had an unfortunate, like bah humbug moment in my house. where we were going to go to this holiday market, and my oldest son, who had some money on him, allowance and stuff like that. I was like, hey, bring your wallet in case there's something you want to buy, for the Christmas. He's like, no. I was like, what are you talking about? No. I was like, just bring, $5 in case you see something for your girlfriend or for your mom or for, anybody. He's like, no. I was like, that money's for me. I want to save that money. I was like, sit down. Let me explain to you the story about the true meaning of Christmas.
Yeah.
And I told him about how Christmas, now, as much as it sucks, to spend your own money.
Yeah.
It's the gift of just bringing the wallet is enough.
Yeah.
And as we were there, I gave them both like $40 for my own wallet. And I said, here, go buy whatever you want. But just the point of you wanting to think to bring it, to do something nice, that is Christmas. And if you say no, I was like, that's like, we're going to watch Scrooge,
You ever give any of them coal?
Oh, no, but I do. I make sure that they know that like the month of December, they got to listen to their parents.
Yeah.
And I make sure Santa tells them that anyways, because it's true, so that's why it's in the song, why there's a list, because like nobody wants to give bad kids anything good, however, everybody deserves something, so even if it was the baddest of all bads per people, like I mentioned before, if the only thing I could even give them is a smile, that's something, at least it's something.
Yeah.
And so like, that's the message of Christmas that I try to imbue in them now, the older kids, is to let them know that Christmas is a lot more than just spending or receiving or wanting something for yourself.
Yeah.
Christmas is not about yourself.
See,
you can a little bit about yourself, but like really not, it's about everybody else. Everybody. It's not just Jewish, Protestant. It doesn't matter what you are. I treat the spirit of Christmas, you call it Christmas, but it's not, it's just a spirit of giving.
Yeah.
It's a spirit of giving back. It's a spirit of like, of everything that encompasses, beyond religion, beyond supernatural people in red suits. It's a lot more to it, which is why I still believe in Santa Claus. And now, did you want to read something else before I get into this last story?
What do you mean? Do I want to read?
Did you have anything else you wanted to say?
Well, the thing that's interesting, and the reason that I asked that is because I was faced with a interesting situation last year. Like I said, I'm wearing this Santa outfit right now. It's my job now. So my brother has now taken over the tradition of having Christmas Eve at his house. Mm-hmm. We got kids from 6 months up until my goddaughter, who is, she's in the double digits now. So I walk into my brother's house without being dressed as Santa, and my cousin, my goddaughter's father, who I'm very close with, I tell him, I'm like, I'm dressing up, it'll all be good. And I see him, he's telling her, he's like, if you notice anything weird, don't say nothing.
Right.
Don't say nothing to no one. And she was like, what? And like, didn't understand what was going on. And then, I come in, all these little kids are losing their mind. Half of them are scared. And then they all come over, sit on my lap, tell me what they want. And I have all these toys for them. And then my goddaughter gets on my lap and I see her look at me and I see her turn her head. And she was like, I know who you are. And I was like, man, did I just ruin that moment for her?
Right.
It's like, did I spoil this?
Did you spoil her Christmas? Yeah.
But, and my goal was this year, I wanted to try to interview a couple different kids from the family about like their thoughts of it all.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm going to wait another year because I feel like, maybe next year she might be more open to talking about it.
Right.
But that's why I was curious about it.
What we should do is invite her over, be dressed normal, then go over to the bathroom and come out.
Just real quick.
Just present it with her right in her face. Yeah. But like, yes and no. So you're talking about a very specific type of belief, the belief in the red man, in the suit, like that particular guy travels from house to house, that type of thing. There's you approach it. Well, like my 5-year-old, I approach it completely different than I do my 13-year-old.
Yeah.
My 13-year-old, I don't even really talk about it that much other than the fact that like I know him because I do know that one guy. And he legitimately is the closest thing I've ever met to Santa Claus. No joke. And it's kind of like I do know him, and that he does, exist outside of me.
Yeah.
In a sense, to where there's no suspicion that we're connected. In other words, if gifts do show up from Santa, if it's not from me, it's from at least the guy I know, if not the real man himself.
Yeah. You have that buffer.
There's that buffer. But, I still explain to them about how you can be Santa, how it's not unique to just one guy. Like we all talk about one guy, but understand that one guy is me. That one guy is you. The one guy, you can be anybody.
I like that.
And they get the concept of what a Santa is.
It's like Kevin McAllister. He's like, I know you're not the real Santa, but I do know
it's
that
exactly that.
Yeah.
It's exactly that. Yeah. And you have to explain that to him because that is the truth. When you go around, you're like, why am I having breakfast with this Santa? And then all of a sudden there's a different Santa at the mall and there's a different Santa at this place, different Santa there. What's going on here?
Yeah.
So it's like you explain to them. And I try not to make anything magical or, I keep the magic of Christmas, of course.
Yeah.
But I also explain to them that those are people who, the spirit of Christmas is filled up in them that much that they're willing to devote their time to have little kids sitting there wet in their laps, to be, covered in contagious diseases.
I know.
To do it for free sometimes, if not, just, very minimal cost, and to play the part and be the part. They are the part as far as anyone knows. Now, it's the, that gift of giving a kid that hope or a spirit of Christmas is Christmas.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it has to come on December 25th. It can happen anytime at any time of the year, which is kind of what I'm going to get into.
That's what I mean. Here
we go.
That's why this is a moment we've all been waiting for.
The moment we've been waiting for. Now, I know that you might have heard the name, maybe not. Jacob Guskey.
Never.
Okay, good. Well, Jacob Guskey was a Jewish man born in New York, losing his father at a very early age. He was adopted by another Jewish family, a guy named Solomon Cohen. He was apprenticed to a printer and a cutter for a clothing factory. Okay, is what his dad did. Stepdad. His stepdad had a lot of business dealings in different cities all over. He wasn't wealthy by any means. He just had different tailor businesses that he would sell his clothes. And there was this one company in Pittsburgh that was really defaulting on all their loans, and it was about to go under, and it was like one of their biggest producers. So he sent his adopted son, Jacob Guskey, here to Pittsburgh to go investigate. This is during the Civil War era. That's when this was going on. And he says, you know what, Dad, like this is this company's going to go under. It's like they have a lot of the good, business already set up. We should sell, make this kind of like a discount store or something. And like you could own it. And like we could just sell your clothes from New York or whatever. And we could make it some sort of store, and go into business together and, do something with this. I think more so than just close the account. And so they did. So his stepdad tried to give it a try, running a small little department store, and eventually started becoming somewhat successful in doing this in Pittsburgh, to the point where in 1881, he was able to sell his company, the portion of the company, to his stepson, Jacob Guskey. Now, he was, at this time, was 33 years old.
Jacob Guskey?
Jacob Guskey.
Okay.
Prior to that, he had no other career other than working for his stepdad in this industry of manufacturing and clothing goods and all that type of stuff. So what do you do when you first inherit, or buy a department store, like a mini department store, right? The first thing he did was completely redo the concept of shopping in a store. Prior to his store, you would go downtown to a Five and Dime or to a place like that, and you would get at a corner store where that's where you'd buy your clothes, it's where you buy your hay, it's where you buy all your stuff, from home. It's just like the top gas station today, kind of, but just a little more expanded. He took this idea to buy, get a building that had multiple stories and you could put different departments on each floor. He invented freight elevators, the first of their kind. First place to ever have escalators in Pittsburgh was his department store. He would go on to, he even had his own 13 arc lights that powered by their own steam plant and dynamos in the basement of the building in 1881 to artificially light the place. So this guy was way ahead of his time. By 1886, the store was not only heated by gas, but it had over 150 different salesmen, 210 cash boys, and over 500 total employees. They even had a restaurant there, which would later go on. The other places would copy it, like TikTok restaurant or all these other places like Horns and Macy's and JCPenney's, all these places would come after Jacob Guskey's. Okay.
Wow.
So he did all this type of stuff. It became a huge, phenomenal thing. He had this idea. He knew how to market. Back and then, if you look at the newspapers, there's just, and the help wanted or the classified pages, just, hundreds of classifieds. He had this idea because he had enough money because it was a successful store to buy the whole page of ads and like put them all together and make like a full page ad for a department store. He was the first person to ever do that.
Oh, wow. Like the whole page all together.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And so when you have that type of power, what do you do with it? When you're very successful, okay.
You give to others.
Well, yeah. So it started with Thanksgiving in 1881. Okay. Now he was 35 years old in 1881. He decides to go to the local Allegheny County, and they had a list of like all the different poor families in Allegheny County, like a poor list. And so he made sure that on Thanksgiving that every single family on the list had a turkey. So that's number one. One year he gave out over 2,700 turkeys.
Holy shit.
Now it's hard to give away like 100 turkeys.
Yeah.
2,700. Another one was 1,700 on that first time he gave it away. I have it written down, which is nuts. But then, what do you do beyond that? He would go to the organization called the Improvement of the Poor, and would just write them a blank check every month and say, do with this what you will to the betterment of the poor. So he would do these types of things like secretly, just behind the scenes. In his store itself, at one time there was a family of 5, like a mother and her 4 children that were outside a department store, the paper said, where he saw them and they were like just on the, like they were like looked homeless and kind of, disheveled and stuff. And he went in and he asked, what's the problem? And she said, well, my husband, I was from England, and my husband, came me and my family to come over here, and he deserted me, and now I'm left with just the clothes on my back, and, my family have no place to go. He says, we're just trying to get back to England, really. We just want to go back. And he said, hold it and stay here for a second. So he goes inside, tells one of his employees, he says, get that family any kind of pair of clothes they want, buy them a train ticket, and get them a ticket for the boat back to England, and, all in the house. Another time, a lady was caught stealing in a store in 1882. She stole $250 worth of items in 1882.
That's
a lot.
A good bit.
Not only did he track her down, and because they caught her, they found out who it was. He let her keep all the items and then gave her a job.
Oh my God.
He then in 1881, the same year time frame here, he decided to start advertising specific like his Christmas displays at his store, and said that no man would be allowed to enter his store in the entire month of December unless they brought at least one single child with them for a gift. They'd be guaranteed a gift. If not, just a box of chocolates. If not, something else. And he said, if you don't have a child, bring your brothers and sisters' kids. If you don't have brothers and sisters, bring bring your cousins. If you don't have cousins, grab a kid off the street. The point is, nobody enters this store without receiving a gift. Okay? Then, that year, 1881, Christmas season, he takes out a full page ad in the newspaper saying that this year he wanted to do something different, something he hasn't done before, something no one's ever done before. And that was reach out again to the improvement of the poor and look into all the different orphanages and different asylums around Allegheny County and Allegheny City and Pittsburgh City, and to see, what, the kids there who are struggling in these homes, him being an orphan at one time himself, trying to repay back, this kind of gift giving idea. And he announced in the papers for all children who live in a home of some sort, like an orphanage or asylum, to write to Santa Claus, care of Guskey's department store, for anything you want, and we'll see what happens. He would later go on to respond to each and every single letter individually, signing them all, but would later fulfill each and every single request by every orphan in Pittsburgh and Allegheny County to the T. They wanted a hobby horse. He got them a hobby horse. He packed it up, had a package on it. He hired 40 wagons, right, to pack this stuff in. He led the charge himself, being pulled by 8 horses and a guy who dressed like Santa Claus, and literally went like mush, and took off into the streets of downtown Pittsburgh at night, stopping at every single orphanage and asylum, giving all the kids. And these are not just handing out random, everybody get the toy trumpet.
Yeah, everyone has what they asked for.
Where's Jimmy Smith? Where's Bobby McGee? Where's...
Holy shit.
One year, a little lady came out, and this was she was at the home of the friendless, a really destitute sounding place. They not only accepted children, but older people too. A lot of times, if you had no family left and no friends, you would end up in one of these places, all alone. Sometimes just literally a one good meal would be your Christmas gift. That like one day out of the year, maybe you got something special for lunch. Maybe you got a new pair of socks. That's how desperate some of these people were. Jacob Gusky shows up, gives all the kids gifts, and some little lady who was staying there comes up to him and says, I might not be a little girl, but I'm just so cold, and I just don't know, like I'm just like I'm lonely, and no one brings me anything. And he said, hold on a second. He had 20 more carts there filled with items for the older people, including gave every single woman in the institution like not mink, but like a cashmere, some kind of cashmere dress, like a black cashmere dress, and he gave all the men cardigans, sweaters.
What?
Right now, here is one of the articles that appeared in the Post Gazette.
This is the article.
Yep, you're looking right at the thing that he put out there to tell kids that he was coming.
Santa Claus, alive, happy, and in all his festive glory.
Yeah.
Ring out ye merry bells. Holy shit.
Yeah, he would, yes. So it's an incredible, just that event alone.
Yeah.
Is an incredible event. However, okay, so 1881, remember he's 35. 1882 comes around, he does the same event. 1883 comes around, it gets bigger every year. There's more kids added, there's more places.
There's really that much money back then?
He had it. Well, he gave it all away.
Yeah.
That's where you'll hear what's going to happen. So 1885 rolls around, and this time he's 39, almost 40 years old, and it's summertime, and he comes down with some kind of like cold. That cold turns into pneumonia. And being in Pittsburgh and having pneumonia and asthma and stuff like that is the worst place it could possibly be, especially in 1886. So he decides to even go down to Florida for the summer, see if the fresh air would help, alleviate it. It did a little bit. He would come back to Pittsburgh. This was in October of that same year, 1885. And while traveling, like coming back from the bus stop or something, he tripped on one of the streetcars, and his pants got caught in the streetcar, and it dragged him 40-something yards on a cobblestone street, downtown Pittsburgh. Now, he lived, and he but was badly, emancipated. He was like already sick to begin with, and that did not make things worse, made things much worse. He knew that his time on earth was going to end.
He knew he was going to die.
He knew he was going to die. And before he died, and this is November of 1886, he knew he needed to throw the kids one last Christmas. So he made the effort and the process go to get the kids to sign letters in early so he could get them out. He went out and purchased all the toys, made sure that they were all secured and going to be there for Christmas. And he died the same week, like that same week in November of 1886. The kids, of course, it was big news that this guy died, and Santa's going to come. Is he going to come this year? And he did. His wife would later carry on the tradition, and one of his he himself had a stepson who would later carry on the same tradition for another few years. One story I read from 1886, and you just type in. You read any newspaper from 1880 to 1886 in Pittsburgh, they're all, if you type in December, it's all about Gusky. And it's only from that time period. You never hear about him again, right? A little girl came up to Santa that first Christmas that Gusky's gone, and wanted to thank Santa, and ask him where Jacob was, and to thank him, and she said that, the story goes that Santa couldn't even talk to her, he was so depressed and crying and things like this, and this kind of message, of the continuance of this tradition that this guy did, even though he gave everything away, because his business would later go out of business. Everything he gave back to the people. his wife was left, a widow and in charge of this department store, she would continue the tradition for just a few more years until she was able to have at least enough money to invest in just a few things before all the money was dried up, when that was creating Pittsburgh's very first Jewish orphanage, which is now the Jewish Family and Children's Services. It's still in process today. It was called the Gusky Orphanage back in the day. And he was one of the founders and first members of the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh.
No way.
Now, he's a member of the Tree of Life Synagogue, right? He's born to a guy, Jacob Gusky. His dad's Solomon Cohen. Does any of this sound like Santa Claus to you? The origin of a Christian Santa Claus concept? Let me read you the stories of the places. Let me read you the names of some of the places that he went to. The first place on his list to go visit, no, excuse me, because some of the terminology is a little dated. First place he visited was the Colored Orphan Asylum. The second was the United Presbyterian Orphans Asylum. The next one was Women's Christian Home, the YCA. St. Joseph's Orphans Asylum, the Home of the Good Shepherd, the Episcopal Church, Little Sisters of the Poor, right? St. Michael's Orphanage, St. Paul's. None of this, some sort of Jewish, anything to do with religion. A Jewish Santa Claus somehow, did the most epic Santa Claus thing that's ever been done. And nobody knows his name. I mean, there's another article from the paper that he promoted. Isn't it? And this guy, he was filled with so much Christmas joy and that is just it overwhelmed him to the point where he became Santa Claus, legitimately became the real life. You wrote the Santa Claus at Gusky's, he answered, and he delivered the presents.
Right here in Pittsburgh. He's really
Santa Claus. So when the kids ask me, is there a Santa Claus? I say, yeah, there is a Santa Claus. Jacob Gusky was Santa Claus. I'm Santa Claus. You're Santa Claus. Anybody can be Santa Claus. We're all Santa Claus, in some way, right? How much Santa Claus you go, that's up to you. But, clearly there are people who are around that, don't have that traditional upbringing of a Christmas. This guy never probably ever celebrated Christmas, ever, as a kid. But he did experience what it was like being an orphan. He knew what it was like to have nothing. And he knew, how to give that gift, even if it was a smile, right? There's that gift of one thing, just to make one kid happy. And there's kids there from 2 months old all the way up to, 12. Now, of course, he passed away. He was only 40 years old when he passed away.
Yeah.
I mean, that's as old as I am now. So it always makes me think about how, what am I doing in my life?
If it was you doing all this at your age, oh my God.
Yeah. So now, and if I had money, I mean, I'd give it all away.
100%.
I'd give it all away. But the only way you're going to know that this guy exists, other than the fact that since I talked, when I first found out about him, I talked about him, and I've since found so much more about this guy, like the weird stories about the lady shoplifting or all these other strange things attached to him, and just what he was like as a person. Yeah. He's buried in Westview Cemetery on Cemetery Lane, in the Jewish cemetery. The first cemetery is a Jewish cemetery.
Yeah,
he's buried there. There's nothing on his grave, just his name and his date of birth, date of death. No one would tell you that this guy was Santa Claus. The only clue left in Pittsburgh at all was because of the charity of his wife in making that Jewish home, that Jewish orphanage, which would go on to, I mean, it was the first of its kind in Pittsburgh, and it was a big deal. They decided to finally give some sort of plaque or recognition to Jacob Gusky in 1933. And this little plaque, which doesn't tell you much about anything that I talked about, but it does mention one thing, and I'm going to read it to you. And this is the picture of it. This is what it looks like.
Wow.
This plaque is at the city county building. If you go down there today and look outside where the big tree is out there, and you just go walk around, you'll see this tucked in the corner. Just been there for this whole time.
No way.
Right. And here's what it says. It says, J.M. Gusky, merchant and philanthropist, born 1845, died in 1886. He was the founder of Pittsburgh's first department store. His charity knew not the bounds of either race nor creed. To make others happy gave him his life's greatest joy. To children his heart went out. At his death, the people in one voice said, "There lies a man. I have heard of thee and hearing of the ear, but now my eye have seeneth thee."
I just like, that's it. Do you think that like
that's what he looked like?
this all happened here and wow, gangster ass mustache.
Yeah. I've tracked down one actual photograph of him, which is pretty interesting. But I think about that. I visited him at Westview Cemetery.
Do people know about this?
No, nobody knows about it. Hopefully they know about it now because I've talked about it, at least a couple times, like on the radio and stuff like that, because it's such an incredible story.
So this dude did this from
1981 to 1886 when he died.
So just
5-year period.
5 years of just like
made everyone's Christmas dream come true.
Holy shit, I got chills. Yeah. That's insane.
That's why I saved that story for last.
And no one knows about him.
Nobody knows. Nobody knows the story about this guy. Well, I talked about it one time. I was so passionate about it talking on KDKA that somebody listening wrote a fictionalized book based upon what I said. No joke. And it's called A Tin Whistle. And it's about Jacob Gusky, and it's like a fake story about like how he discovered the meaning of Christmas or whatever. But it's based upon what I said. Loosely based the story. Yeah, it's written by like a local author who heard it.
When did you find this?
That just a couple years ago. Like myself, think about it. Like, how could you not go your entire life growing up in Pittsburgh
and not know about
never hear the guy's name, let alone know that he was like a legitimate Santa Claus. Like one more so than any other city. I've never seen anybody on earth anywhere do this same type of thing. Like legitimately,
give away his life.
There was 41 in October of 1886. That was in 1886, his last year. They gave over 1,700 gifts individually out. Individually, each one signed personally to the kids in the homes. 1,700. They were loaded up on 20 additional wagons. Or there's 20 wagons and then 20 additional wagons
for the adults.
Yeah. So
holy shit.
Yeah. And think about this. This is prior to electric cars and everything. So like you're talking like horse-drawn.
Yeah, this dude is out there.
Christmas,
this isn't easy. This is not an easy feat.
Like riding through the snow to the people's houses, traveling all over Pittsburgh in one night.
My goodness.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. He's a legitimate, real life case of Santa Claus. And I'm happy that Judge Michael Masmano made him real, at least, because we know that he was real. That's the thing. Like, and like I bring it back. When the kids talk about Santa Claus and stuff, that's who I talk about. I talk about Jacob Gusky with Santa Claus. I was like, Michael Masmano making these people legal. He is Santa Claus. That's like, when I told his story about giving that guy money and I didn't expect anything in return. I didn't want anything in return. I was Santa Claus.
This is fucking crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Jacob Gusky. Wow.
It's very moving.
It's a story that I've never heard before that is extremely moving. It's just the more you talk about and the more you look into this guy, and there's still like, you're only talking about the stuff that I've just like randomly found in the newspapers.
Yeah, it's like, what did he do besides put it all together? Christmas?
I don't even know. Like there's got to be so much more to this story.
Yeah, because if someone does this now as an adult, like his whole life had to be filled with things, that's not something that just like comes.
Yeah. But again, this all happened in a short brief of time. He was a young man. He died younger than me, and that's, and to think about those accomplishments, that you did.
Man, I can't believe that this plaque is down there. And
well, if you go to see, it doesn't look as shiny like that. It's all rusty and forgotten about. The bird crap all over it and stuff. Like you would have no idea.
We need to put this man
you make a statue. Yes. I know. There's a lot of people in Pittsburgh history that need a statue. Bruno Sammartino being one of them. But yeah, there's the Jacob Gusky story and the fact that this is like literally a Pittsburgh Jewish Santa Claus.
This is the wildest shit ever.
Yeah, this is my favorite. This is Christmas story in Pittsburgh related as well.
This is more mind blowing than Gustav Whitehead.
Good. Yeah, that there really was a man. Yes,
this is worth every bit of suspense that you were building throughout this whole conversation.
Thank you. Yes,
this really does blow your mind. Because,
good. Yeah. It is.
Jesus.
Listen to this. Is leaving Gusley's promptly at 9:00 on the morning. It's Christmas. Santa will make his 8th grand annual tour of the orphan asylums of Pittsburgh.
Did he call himself Santa?
No, he rode with Santa in the front of the thing.
Yeah.
And like, so he never dressed up like Santa, which would have been the ultimate, you know?
Yeah, that would have been crazy.
It's almost even better that
I like that he didn't. That's what I mean.
Like that he really was
didn't
Santa the
want
whole
that.
time. Yeah. But like he was getting, yeah.
Now, let me ask you this. Whenever these kids are writing letters to him and he's replying to them, does he reply Jacob Gusky?
I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question. I've never seen one of the letters.
I was just
That'd be
asked that.
yeah.
Is there any, where would you even be able to find that?
Probably just Santa. Well, only if someone saved it. Save the actual letter. And then you're talking about things that would be like stuff in an orphanage.
Where did you find these news articles?
These were the full page ads that were in the Post Gazette.
Yeah, but I mean, where are you reading these?
Oh, well, I did the same thing like you did. I mean, that's how things all begin. I just went on, you go to all the different archival sources and just type in the word Christmas or Pittsburgh Christmas, Pittsburgh, whatever, Pittsburgh Santa.
Were you like mind blown when you wrote this?
Yeah.
Whenever
So
you read this?
first thing that I find, like now I find lots of stuff about, Santa. I found this great article about Santa Claus dropping dead in one room with a bunch of kids were waiting in the other room.
What?
At a YMCA. Yes, there's like a bunch of cool, funny stories like that. So like, and a lot of other, neat, funny tales. And then I start seeing like these ads, and I don't see anything other than these kind of weird Santa Claus ads appearing in the paper. I'm like, who's this? This seems interesting. What's this? Who's this? And then like you start looking up Gusky, you don't find he's in books like Pittsburgh history books as the guy who owns the first department store, but not anything about this this stuff he did at Christmas. And I'm like, how could you not, like, how you admit like this incredible story that like clearly it was like every year was like a big event.
Dude, this is insane.
And
wow, that it's never been that I feel like that I've never heard about it. Like, why?
Never. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense why nobody knows about it. I mean, that's the question I ask myself.
Why doesn't he have a day in December?
Yeah,
or something like that.
Yeah, or anything. There are still. Here's the point behind all that too. And my wife and I were just talking about that. And I talk about that when I talk to the kids at the high school, or I talked to a bunch of third graders also last month. And I said the same thing to them, and that is, there's these figureheads and these people like Jacob Gusky, people like all these people who are the true spirit of Christmas, and what that represents. And no doubt about it that this guy,
this is Santa.
That's why I say, when I said I know Santa, or I know of a Santa, like the Santa is real, and that is not like, I'm not saying like, and because if 100%, absolutely 100, it is real. Like Santa Claus is real. You can be Santa Claus. I can be Santa Claus. Anybody can be Santa Claus. But like, that is the meaning of Christmas. A Jewish man taking his time and effort, give away all of his money, to give it all away to kids who have nothing. I mean, what is more Christmas than that? Like
nothing.
If there had to be a way to become a saint instead of slapping a man in church, I think maybe this might get you a little bit better. Man. This is like the real life Saint Nick. It's like almost a saint.
Dude, this is wild.
Yeah.
Very wild.
And I visited his grave in Westview, and I've been there by myself, and just sit next to him and be like, hey, like, thanks,
man. I want to
hopefully somebody else will stop by someday and say hello. I mean, like something. Leave something on his grave to say you were there. Like Jesus, because this man does deserve to be remembered.
Oh my God.
This is a guy who passed away, a young man.
I feel like I have to learn every single thing about him.
Yeah. Well, there was little things I admitted, like, for example, he did have enough money in his will left over to give his wife, enough to live on for a brief time before that all dried up.
Yeah.
One of the things they did with that money in 1890, other than create the orphanage, is they bought and brought the very first elephant to Pittsburgh.
What?
Yes. And that elephant was named Jacob. And it lived at the Pittsburgh Zoo until 1940s. And most kids in Pittsburgh grew up from 1900 to 1940. Their biggest memory of going to the Highland Park Zoo was going to visit old Jacob the elephant and feed him peanuts and stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh my God.
And that's how most kids remembered him. Even then, that was 60 years ago. Prior to that event, the 1940 was 60 years.
Before all this.
Before all that. Yeah. So like he still kind of had a little bit of a influence.
But like
like, I feel like that this is insane that this isn't like,
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, if you start researching it, you're going to find basically my stuff, because there is no additional research on the guy. I don't know why.
you got a photo of him?
Yeah. I'll send you it. Yeah.
I need a photo. I'm going to post all these articles.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I got all the stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So we got to compile this just like I made on the last time we did an episode, because I got to post this stuff because I feel like people are going to be mind blown. 100%.
Yeah.
Like,
Pittsburgh Santa Claus is
insane.
It's the greatest. It's the greatest. It's not only the greatest Pittsburgh Christmas story, but it's like one of the greatest Christmas stories.
Is there a better Christmas story? I don't think I've ever heard of it.
I don't know. That's why I had to save it.
Like, have you tried to look for other occurrences of this?
I've never heard of anybody ever in any time period doing what he did other than Saint Nick himself. Now, I'm sure there's people who gave stuff away.
Yeah, but on this level?
On this level, not like this.
And this is documented. This isn't some made up bullshit. Like,
right. Yeah. I mean, like, you're looking at it, you know? Pretty nuts. Pretty nuts.
Is pretty insane.
Yeah. So that's like, that's my biggest Christmas Pittsburgh history story. Now, there are others, you know.
Yeah.
But once you talk about that,
how do you top
better?
this?
Yeah, there's none better. There really isn't. But it goes to show you, like I mentioned in the beginning, you know, it'd be nice to have a lot of money to give all this back, but he knows what it was like on the flip side.
Yeah.
You know,
he saw it in the beginning.
Right.
And that's what cultivated this sort of mentality in this life that he wanted to give back to everyone.
Pretty crazy, huh?
Wow.
Yeah.
Absolutely unreal. As usual, absolutely unreal. I feel like we had to end it on that.
Yep.
I appreciate you as usual coming over, talking to me about all this stuff. Every time you talk to me, you tell me a story and my eyes start watering.
Yeah.
It's not even about like, I don't know what it is. It's like emotion just starts pouring out of me.
Oh yeah. Well, Jacob Gusky, man. I mean,
I got to get an elephant tattoo, I feel.
Yeah. You know, good old Gusky. I've tracked down, I go on eBay every once in a while and I'll do a search because it was a popular department store. There's stuff that exists. So I did find some like letterhead from the department store and a couple other like random things from Gusky's department store, which is cool. So that stuff still exists if you're on eBay. But it's cool. And even that, it's like, like a magical piece of thing came in the mail because it's like, it was in his presence, you know?
Yeah, dude, that's
pretty
insane. Cool. All right. How are you gonna, what are your plans for Christmas this year?
I want to, this year, my whole family at the moment, and it's true. A lot of people had weird experiences during COVID and stuff like that. Well, me and my family, we got like closer and better.
Yeah.
We were just getting even better and better and better.
Yeah.
And this Christmas, we're at the peak of our, everybody kind of being happy, and it's going to be a great time by all for sure. And I take the extra time and effort, to really make it magical and special for everybody.
Yeah.
And especially for the kids. I mean, I'm like, you thought Jacob Gusky was good. Like, I know all these stories. And you gotta emulate them, at least a little bit. And you try to bring that hidden Christmas spirit. Like I told the kids at the schools and stuff. Just holding the door open for somebody. Saying hello. Saying thank you. Looking somebody in the eyes. At Wendy's. That alone is a little gift.
Yeah.
And what you do with these gifts and how you give them out, think about that, especially during the month of December. You should think about it every month, but in the month of December, make an effort to do something nice for somebody without expecting anything in return. Just experience that feeling of just pure giving and see how you feel. And you'll find out that like, it is the greatest feeling on earth. I can understand why, how Andrew Carnegie and all these other big people that gave away everything. Remember, Carnegie gave away everything.
Yeah.
He might have been an evil person to get the money, but he gave it all away.
Yeah.
I know why he gave these things away. It's the same reason this guy did, the same reason that anybody gives away anything, but to not expect anything in return. He didn't want, like, what's he gonna, like, you pay to go to the library?
Yeah. I mean, what the hell?
He gave it away for free, you know? It's for betterment of you. Like, no, it's up to you to make yourself better. Like, he's not going to force you in the library. You still got to go there and choose to read, but he's giving you those opportunities. And as a gift.
It's what we do with it from this point forward.
Yeah. Now he does differ from Gusky, because Gusky was like literally giving to the extreme. I mean, even during the non-holiday time periods, he was giving. Like he gave that lady all the stolen clothes. I mean, what kind of people do that? You know, so
Santa Claus.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Yeah,
Santa does it.
Yeah.
Everyone else that's listening, I appreciate it. If you take anything from this conversation, give someone just a piece of kindness this year. You know?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I feel like that's I don't know. I've like chills right now, because that's what
it's all about. Yeah.
It's crazy to hear about that.
It is.
It is crazy to hear about that. And it's crazy that that's not something that's more known throughout. And I hope that people listening right now get something from our talk.
Yeah.
I appreciate you. I appreciate all the things that you do. Everyone else in the city appreciates what you do. And everyone else that's listening, appreciate you guys for hearing it out. Thanks for listening. Call you right back.